someone presents, we can move over there. You can move
Yeah. Hi, good morning. Good morning. Excuse me. Good. Hopefully, I won't have to say good morning tonight. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. It's Monday, May 20th. It's 7:03 p.m. and this is a Weston Board of Education regular meeting being held in the Weston Middle School Library. All the members are here. Peter Gordon is joining us remotely, and he can both listen and participate. We have a quorum, and so the first item on the agenda is a Pledge of Allegiance. Thanks, everybody. So before we get started, this is a slightly different meeting. We're going to have the second evening of what will be many evenings to discuss the proposed renovation of the Weston Middle School. I'm sure there'll be a lot of conversation this evening about that. Representatives from Tecton are here, and they've been engaged in this process going back 4 years, I guess, when the Facilities Optimization Committee was formed, and I'm certain they can answer questions from the board, and we will take public comment. And just before we start, can people raise their hands as to who would like to speak this evening? Great. So before we start to the board, speaking to the board, we generally have under our bylaws a 20-minute allocation of time for public comment, but given the number of people that would like to speak, I'd like for us to waive that. And so there's a motion to be read. I can make the motion and someone can second it, or one of you can make the motion. I have the language right here. Okay, so the motion is, this is to waive the bylaws of the Board of Education, so this will be open for public comment for as long as people want to speak. So I move that the Weston Board of Education, per bylaw 9314, suspend for this meeting on May 20th, 2024, the 20-minute maximum per subject matter during public comment. The vote must be 2/3 to pass when no such written notice has been given prior. Do I have a second? All those in favor? So thank you, Peter. This evening during public comment, everybody and anybody who would like to speak will have that opportunity, and there is a 5-minute limit, just so everyone knows that, and Jody will handle that. So the next item on the agenda, item number 3, is approval of the minutes, and it's the minutes from April 8th, 2024. It's the Board of Education regular meeting. Are there any changes to that? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the minutes from the April 8th Board of Ed meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. The next it's ominous when someone speaks like that. The next item on the agenda is to approve the. I'm sorry. The next item on the next item on the agenda is to approve the meeting minutes from the May 15th, 2024 Weston Board of Education special meeting. Are there any changes to those minutes? May I have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the Board of Education special meeting from May 15th minutes.
Great. Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item number 4 is the Student Board of Education representative comments.
Thank you so much.
All right. Hi, everyone. It's Nivi and Gianna, the Weston High School representatives. So we're just here to give you guys some updates about what's been going on at the high school. So to start us off, we have our... Can you guys hear me? Hello? All right. To start us off, we have our spring sports still continuing. So girls lacrosse and boys baseball, for example, starting on full season. So SU season states. AP exams were just completed these past 2 weeks. So that was our grind time for juniors and seniors. That finished this Friday. And we also had prom this Friday as well, as along with our the seniors' last day of school while we go on to internship. The venue was in Stamford. We all had a really good time. Nivi and I definitely had fun at prom. It was a beautiful venue, beautiful, amazing food, and yeah.
Last week we also had the band concert and choir concert, and it was really good, really fun. I'm in choir, so I had so much fun on stage performing with all my senior choir friends for the last time. Weston's also performed, and it was a really great performance. Also, we just finished the pollinator garden in the high school, and that's basically a garden that was created during our sustainable class in the courtyard that basically had nothing in there before. It's a beautiful space. There's a little pond, there's like a little area for birds, a birdhouse, and a lot of plants that are going to continue to grow after we leave the high school. Last day of school was on May 17th, and today was our first day for internship. A lot of the seniors loved their first day and are going to continue enjoying it too. And we have graduation coming up on June 13th, which we're very excited for. So yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. Lisa?
Nivi and Gianna, we would like to take this opportunity, because this is the last Board of Ed meeting that you will both be at before graduation, to thank you for the commitment that you have demonstrated on behalf of Weston High School, the student government, to ensure that we are well informed of what's going on at the high school. You have come to both in-person and Zoom meetings. When one of you may have been busy, you always made sure the other was there. And we would like to thank you. And so Mr. Aziz, on behalf of the board, does have, we have a little gift for you. And I am happy to report that both of you will hopefully stay in touch, because you're both going to DC for college, correct? So Gianna's going to American University and Nivi will be at GW. And we are very, very proud of you. If you could please come up and get your gifts, and someone take a picture for the Instagram.
You're more than welcome to come to our next meeting after you graduate.
Let's pose by the flag real quick. Okay, no, thank you. You guys are great. Okay, I want that on the public school things, just send it to me. So I'm going to exceed 2,000 followers.
We're so excited.
That's what it's all about. The next item on the agenda is public comment, and we read a statement before public comment begins. The statement is, the board welcomes the opportunity to hear from members of the public about matters concerning Weston Public Schools. Public comment is an important chance for the board to receive input and feedback from our school community. We listen attentively to all comments shared. While we value and pay close attention to public comment, it is our practice not to respond substantively or sometimes at all during public comment, and there are several reasons for this. First, engaging in a discussion on a non-agenda item could violate the board's obligations to comply with the Freedom of Information Act. Second, the board or the administration may not be prepared to discuss certain matters raised in the first instance by a public comment. Third, the board develops its meeting agenda carefully to ensure that the board addresses matters that are pressing or relevant at the time of the meeting. We encourage members of the public with specific questions, concerns, or complaints about our schools to reach out directly to Superintendent Barbario. You may also email the board at our email address, boardofelucation@westonps.org. Additional details on public comment and board meetings can be found on our website, which is listed. And with that, and our meeting conduct is covered by the bylaws of the board, 9325. So with that, Jody, would you like to go from
Would
here?
the first person that would like to speak for public comment please come forward and have a seat? We just ask that you identify yourself by your full name and your street address, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Maria Robotham. I'm on Kettle Creek Road. I'm going to read this because it might be easier to get all the words in. I'm speaking tonight in favor of moving forward with the motion regarding Weston Middle School so that the Board of Selectmen and town citizens may continue the debate surrounding the ultimate fate of the school. I feel something must be done to modernize the middle school, whether it be this plan for new construction or something else. I think everyone can agree the town of Weston can do better for our kids, and moving this measure forward will start that journey. I currently have 2 children in the school system, one at WIS and the other at the middle school. I spend a lot of time in both of these buildings as I'm the current PTO president of WIS and on the executive committee for the PTO for West, for the middle school. I was also previously the Hurlbut PTO president. The middle school, where we sit right now, has the most amount of issues that need to be addressed first. I don't think there's much debate around that fact. The question is simply how much and at what cost. I personally feel wasting hard-earned taxpayer dollars on Band-Aids isn't the right solution for our kids or our town. Haven't we learned that lesson by now? I also think that replacing or modernizing Weston Middle School isn't about making a shiny new building. It's simply about replacing an asset that is at the end of its useful life. That is our civic duty at the end of the day. I refer to the middle school as an asset, as the school system remains overwhelmingly why families move to Weston. Our family was lucky enough to be able to choose where we decided to move 10 years ago from New York City. We decided on our residence at Kettle Creek. It was the closest a house available at the time to the Weston-Westport border. Easy access for commuting and suburban amenities were at the top of our list, but ultimately seconded by our desire to enroll our children in Weston public schools. Since then, we have watched many houses on Kettle Creek turn over almost exclusively to families with children. I raise this point because Weston has many empty nest households. These citizens will need to see the value in spending money on Weston Middle School too. Keeping the physical and learning environments of Weston Public Schools up to date remains in their interest as well to maintain demand for Weston's housing and real estate values. I'll close by saying I know the entire community wants our children to succeed and thrive. Only a healthy debate will ensure that outcome. I hope you vote to move this motion forward. Thank you.
Is there somebody else that would like to speak? Come forward. Please just state your name and your street address for the record. Thank you.
Amy Sanborn, Old Hyde. Is that working? Okay. Thank you, everybody. Others have given bios. I grew up here. I went to school K-12. I came back. I raised my kids here. They went to school. I've been here 31 years, and I plan to stay here. I was on all PTO executive boards. I was the president of the middle school PTO. I was on the EdSpec committee for the last school construction project, and I was on the district strategic planning committee. My third grade classroom was in the town hall meeting room in the first boom in the 60s. My fifth grade class was down at Temple Israel after the Hurlbut building burned down. My kids were also in the bubble and had portables at the middle school and lived through the core construction at Hurlbut. And in each case, the most important thing was the teachers in the classroom. And I thank all of the teachers that I had and the ones that are here now. I understand what's going on. I followed the FOC, I followed the EOC, and I have some questions. I'm not pro or con yet because I feel like I need to understand more. So I'm going to try to reel off a bunch of questions. Is there a simple white paper that shows why we can't have a 3-building system? I understand it would cost money to do it, but we'd save operating costs. I went through all of the links. I looked back at minutes and notes and whatnot, and there's nothing that simply says, we could do this or we could do that, it would cost this, it would cost that. How many classrooms do we have now that were classrooms that are no longer classrooms, that might be a copier room, first grade, second grade resource room that could be classrooms? I haven't seen that. We're also reducing something around 30,000 square feet, and my question is, there are needs beyond the schools in town, whether it's the folks at the annex, whether it's the senior center. We have additional costs for the high school, for Hurlbut, whether we're going to build onto Town Hall, and it seems to me that we need to look at all of these things together before we decide to eliminate 30,000 square feet. There's also a reference to evidence-based research with respect to 25% of the value of the physical environment. I'd like to see that. There's also, it's better if you don't have to transition as many times between buildings. We'll have 2 transitions. If there were 3 buildings, we'll have 3 transitions, there would only be 2. As the first captain of the Weston High School swim team, when the pool opened, I also question with a 52-year-old pool, when we're spending this kind of money and doing this kind of renovation, why there has been no discussion about updating and fixing the pool. It also seems to me that it's somewhat coincidental, and I forget if it's student per square foot or square foot per student, but we're right at that reimbursement target. Should we have more square feet? Was the program designed to hit the square footage? Do we need less? Do we need more? I'm not sure that I understand that it's not just a coincidence. So while the Renovate is new, may be more disruptive, if it possibly achieves objectives that are in the best interest of the town as a whole, I wonder whether we should look at that. I don't know what portables would cost. I would feel more comfortable if I had more information and looked at the overall school and town buildings in its entirety to develop an all-encompassing, proper prior planning, preventing piss-poor performance, with the building committee involved as it relates to both the schools and the overall town. I am a school supporter. I'm an empty nester. I've gone through different cycles. At one point, I had 2 houses in town with no children. And our children are precious. I believe they are precious. And I also believe we can do what's right for the children and the town together overall. And I just think maybe we're rushing here. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another person that would like to speak? Please state your name and your street address.
Lynn Kimberly, 3 Broad Street, but that's my opening. Good evening. I'm Lynn Kimberly. I live at 3 Broad Street. My family moved to Weston in 1968 when I entered 3rd grade in Hurlbut. I'm a graduate of Weston High School. I'm a former teacher and athletic coach in Weston, too. It's a small world. Superintendent Lisa and I actually started teaching in Weston the same year, just in different schools. My husband and I chose to move here 31 years ago. We raised 2 daughters here, and they're Weston High School graduates as well. My eldest is a teacher in a local high school. First and foremost, my family values education. Second, I would like to thank you, the Board of Ed and the administrative team, for moving your monthly meetings back to 7 p.m. start time, which allows more people to participate. I'd like to believe my public comment on March 18th might have contributed to that decision. On April 26th, I attended the EOC meeting and sat through the Tecton presentation of the Weston Middle School building project. On May 15th, I attended the special meeting where Tecton presented the Weston Middle School building project to the entire board and administrative team. As I sat through public comment, I realized you were only going to allow parents with children in the schools to speak. Only 7 people did speak. There were 44 in the waiting room. So 37 people were not allowed the opportunity to publicly speak that night. That's why I'm here tonight. My third point is about meeting decorum. Before every Board of Ed public comment, a statement is read by the chairman, which mentions Board Policy 9325A, meeting conduct, specifically number 2. No uncivil conduct should be permitted at a Board of Ed meeting. This policy is really directed at the public attending Board of Ed meetings. After what I witnessed at the last meeting, the policy needs to be extended to include Board of Ed members and the administrative team too. As a former BOE member and officer, chairman of the Communications, Curriculum, and Policy Committees, I have never before witnessed someone at the front table call out or bully a member of the public. I find this behavior unacceptable that our civil discourse in this town has stooped so low. I believe a public apology is in order. Fourthly, the meat of my public comment is about the proposed Weston Middle School project of $112 million. Whether it's including the grant or not is irrelevant. As a former Board of Ed member and officer, my tenure was during the last school referendum and building project. The debt service from that last school building project is just winding down. The mantra for the former school building project, which I did not vote for, was if you build it, they will come. Unfortunately, they did not come. Our taxes went up, our homes did not sell for years. Sadly, the only saving grace to this town was the COVID bump in real estate sales, which are slowly winding down again. To date, we are actually down 450 students since that new school opened 20 years ago. Weston chose to spend money on brick and mortars. The most important part of education are the teachers, the programs, and the curriculum. I hope we don't spend money on bricks and mortar again. Please engage all Weston residents, not just a small subset of those with kids in the schools. Since 2/3 of the residents here do not have children in the schools, sadly I feel that Weston may be destined for history to repeat itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the next person like to step up? Please just state your name and your street address.
Hello, everyone. My name is Irina Kozina, 27 Timbermill Lane, and I have a question about the pool. I've been a member of Connecticut Swimming for almost 10 years. I'm also USA Swim official, and I have 2 kids on competitive swimming. My kids were on the Weston swim team for a few years, and then we transferred. Now I'm with the YMCA. And when my kids were on the team, we tried to address many problems with our pool. And I don't know if you're aware, but Weston has a pretty big swim team, and they're only Weston kids. And it's just quite remarkable because other swim teams, they have kids from all over. So it's popular, this swim team in Weston. But the swimming pool is really needs some upgrade, and we tried to address this issue in 2017. And I haven't written anything, sorry. So first thing that needs to be upgraded is as a changing room. The cabbies, they look like, if you walk in, you will see, and I just walk in before this meeting, I just walk in to check if anything changed since 2017, but no, it's still the same. The cabbies are all ruined, and it's impossible to use. No one uses them. Kids, they just drop the stuff on the floor. The showers, they don't work, and they're dripping, and they've been dripping. They were dripping in 2017, they still do. And there's some problems with the heating systems. It's extremely hot in the hallway and not hot enough in the changing room, something. I don't have I won't list all the problems, but there are many problems with the swimming pool. I just want to make sure that you will consider. And I don't know, I haven't read through all the renovation projects. Maybe there will be any changes made. But swimming is popular in Weston, and it's also part of Parks and Recs, and they offer lessons for small children before they go to school. There are senior lessons for the senior citizens of Weston. It's just very popular, and I hope it will be renovated as well.
Thank you. Next person. Thank you. State your name and your street address.
Good evening. Craig Brownell, White Birch Ridge. Quick question. Who on the Tecton group put together the estimates of future enrollment for the middle school that's on the presentation? I'm sorry?
It came from SLAM, which is a company that we've worked with to do our projections for many years. So they use the information from the SLAM projection.
All right. So I'm not familiar with SLAM, but let's just, if we're to deal with reality, what we're looking at is the last time we were in this position, as this knowledgeable woman spoke to, our enrollment is down 20%, not up 20 to 30% as projected. I think to project an 11% enrollment increase in a period where the state of Connecticut is projecting that the number of school-age children in the state is going to be down by 5% is, a little misleading. Can anybody say what the live births in Weston were over the last 3 years? Because those are the children that are going to be here in middle school, right? Because as we look forward, we know kids between 1 and 3 right now are the ones that are going to be here in the middle school. So how many kids between the ages of 1 and 3 do we have in Weston today? Does anybody know? Might be a good thing to ask, right? I am firmly in the camp that we should be looking at all of our alternatives. The number of the birth rates in our state as well as our country are continuing to decline. The trend is for number of school-age children to decrease, not increase. We should be looking at ways to move to a 3-school system, not a 4-school system, and eliminate the overhead that goes with maintaining a 4th building and maintaining the administration inside of a 4th building. What ultimately our community wants, I believe, is to have excellent schools that are administered and run cost efficiently, and the combination of those two things will lead to high property values, which is what all of us in this community are looking for. The idea of taking on another $120 million of debt, and you say $112 million. Listen, I'm in commercial real estate. I do this every day. Nothing comes in at the price you put down on the paper. It never does. So that 112 is going to be 140, I promise you. So do we need that in Weston? I most certainly do not think we need that in Weston. What we need is to utilize the space we have effectively and upgrade where necessary and try to bring ourselves into 3 buildings so that we can be cost effective and administer the highest quality education to our students. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Thank you. Please step forward and state your name and your address.
Good evening. My name is Armando Yasa. I have a son in Hobart and one on the way. Hopefully, we'll have more. So I think this is a significant investment. $110 or $112 million is the town budget is $80 million. The budget of the Board of Education is 60, so this is almost twice as the budget of education. So I think it requires a lot of thoughtfulness. And we're only talking about a 1/4 of the schools, right? So we're talking only about the middle school, not the intermediate school, not Hobart, not the high school. So if we extrapolate that the expense would be, or the investment would be $110 million for each of the buildings, we'll be talking about $440 million. No? So I would love to talk about long-term planning, about the future of our whole school system. So we all agree that our kids should have a school of up to their standards and of elevated quality, but that comes from the teachers and not so much from the buildings. I think for a decision of this significance, 80% of the town, at least, should be in alignment. This shouldn't be a 51-49 split, right? Everybody should agree that this is the way forward. And from what I hear from my neighbors, there's a lot of discussion still, because it's not clear why the investment went up significantly over the last few years. I have been trying to read the documents that are on the website, and they're extremely confusing and long. But a few things come to mind. Tecton Architects, which, by the way, I hear a lot these tecton architects, so I would love to see other suppliers as well. But they say it's 110 to renovate and 112 to rebuild. Clearly, that leads to the conclusion that it's better to renovate, to build as new instead of renovating, if it's going to be so close the cost. The feasibility study by another firm that I read from 2019 quotes 32, or 31.7 to be more precise. And then I also read that the Westport Middle School was renovated in 2021 for $32 million. All the hallways have new tiles, all the windows were replaced, and the school community would also enjoy a new HVAC system. The library had a huge overhaul with flexible furniture and new books, and the atrium was completely cleaned. So I would just advise for a little more time to make this decision, so that 80% of the town is behind whatever we decide, and we can invest our dollars wisely. Whether it's for a new building, maybe that's the case, or renewing it, or renovating it. But if I read the budget that Westport spent, maybe we can get a couple of other benchmarks in Wilton, New Canaan, Darien, and try to see what can we come up with that is a little more cost efficient for our families. Because we're not only going to renovate the middle school, we're probably going to have to do the same with the high school, with Hurlbut, or with WIS at some point. And again, the question of 3 schools, I also have that question, and I don't understand why there's an advantage of this 4-tier system. No? So thank you for considering my comments.
Next individual, please. Name and street address, and then you can begin.
My name's Alex Staley in Lord's Highway. So I guess I just have a few questions, comments too, but again, I think like everyone who spoke already, I don't think anybody's necessarily anti-new school or anti-education. I think a big thing that's very challenging when trying to determine where someone may stand on some of these big ticket items is the information is in many cases very old, in many cases being relied on from more than a half a decade ago. I mean, the agenda tonight had documents from 2017 that, to Armando's point, quoted numbers that were less than a third of what's being talked about here. I would try to look back in the various documents, and it looked like at one point we were talking about 5 different options that involved consolidation of schools, and most of those scenarios were around $100 million. And it's unclear how we got from that type of analysis to, okay, now it's renovate as new or build new, which is $110 million. So it's very challenging to understand the evolution of this, partly because it takes so long. Like, that's nobody's fault. I mean, that's local and government as a general matter, but it would be good to understand the history a little bit more, because I would assure you that there are a lot of people here today that probably didn't even know that Weston existed 6 years ago, because a lot of people moved in from out of state, from the city, and like, it's just a lot's changed in 6 years. That's nobody's fault, but it's just, this is a very large amount of money. I haven't seen any analysis around like what we think this means for property taxes, for the mill rate, how much debt we think it's going to be, what the cost of that debt is, how it's going to be raised, what the impact of mill rate is, what that means for future planning, what that means for the renovation of Hurlbut, which I'm sure is next. WIS was just recently built, and I'm sure like once all this stuff is done, will have to be rebuilt too. So it seems like the planning as a whole is very scattershot, and it's just unclear what the long-term plan is. And it's also unclear given, I lived in Westport when a lot of the Coleytown stuff was starting to come to fruition, and they basically built a new school and had mold remediation for $30 million. And so it's very confusing on how the conclusions that we've achieved is we either renovate as new, and that's going to cost $110 million, and you're going to build new. I'm sure there are middle grounds between there, and I haven't seen any of that in the materials. Maybe they're there, maybe they're not, and if they are, I'd be happy to see where they are. But it just feels like we need more time to really understand the implications, to understand the financial implications, the implications for the kids who are actually in the school, and what it means for the long-term planning. And my last comment is, I'm not opposed doing this grant. I think if we have to do the grant once a year and you want to make sure you get 20% of your costs, like, we should do it, so long as it's not a foregone conclusion once we get the grant. Because that's my biggest fear, is even as the resolutions are proposed, it kind of puts in the Board of Selectmen's hands that they can accept the grant. And if it gets accepted, like, are we basically like, we have 20% of it, we better build a school type thing? And like, that seems completely backwards. We should be understanding the full financial implications on what we want to do, and then applying for the grant, knowing that we have approval, we have funding, the town's approved of it, as opposed to the other way around. If we want to do the other way around, that's fine, but we should make sure that this grant application isn't like binding the town and all of us sitting here and every other 10,000 people in the town to funding a new school simply because we did it backwards. So I would appreciate that consideration. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Please state your name and your street address, and then you may begin your 5 minutes.
Thank you. Ellen Crafts, 5 Northfield Road. So last Thursday, May 16th, my husband and I participated in a parent tour of Weston Intermediate School, led by 2 wonderful 5th grade students. We were so excited. Our 2nd grader is moving on to WIS. We're going to miss you, Hurlbut. But we were really impressed by the award-winning building and the welcoming learning spaces it offers. However, when another parent in our group casually asked our tour guides if they were excited about going to middle school, they both expressed sadness about leaving WIS, but they particularly described the middle school as dark and broken, and they were worried about that. Now, I know, as serving as a PTO-BOE representative, and from my friends with children at the middle school, that the administration and teachers make this school, great, despite the facility conditions. But these children's comments highlighted the urgent need to explore the option of building a new middle school in our district. Weston's middle school-aged children, and teachers and staff, by the way, deserve a learning environment that not only meets basic safety standards, but also nurtures their mental health, promotes wellness, and fosters emotional connection during this critical time in their lives. The current state of the middle school building is unacceptable. It fails to provide necessary safety measures, lacks proper ventilation, and is riddled with structural issues that compromise the well-being of our students and staff. From inadequate emergency systems to outdated facilities, it's evident that our children deserve better. And it's our duty as parents and the citizens of Weston to provide our middle school students, teachers, and staff with a safe and purpose-built facility that meets the needs of 21st century education. Now, after attending the special BOE meeting on May 15th and watching and reviewing the Tecton presentation, it was clear that building new is the right path forward. We must, of course, explore all the ways this decision can impact our community and then vote on it as a town. But this cannot prevent you, our Board of Ed members, from acting now. What will be said or asked tonight will be many things around actual costs and taxes. But at the end of the day, this grant application, as explained, does not obligate the town to build, but it allows the process to keep going. And as a reminder, at our town ATBM, Weston already voted to approve the money to move this grant project forward, first as a line item in the budget by a majority, and it was passed again last Saturday as part of the town budget by voters. Everyone on this board was elected or appointed while the FOC or EOC process was going on. We know that in 2022, that you guys were charged by the FOC to take a look at the plan and make recommendations on the buildings. We need you to make those decisions now. Sharing information and updates as they happen, and keeping the best interest of the generation of Weston students in mind. Weston is our schools. It's why we move here, and it's what keeps our families coming to Weston to live here. Sadly, I don't know if our daughter will get a chance to go to a new middle school, even if all the timelines are met. But what we believe is that an investment in our town's children, even when it doesn't benefit our own, is worth the price. So please, make the decision today to vote yes, to keep this project going forward. Thank you for all of your time and hard work on this. See you all at the fair this weekend. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Thank you. Please state your name and street address, and then you can start your 5 minutes.
Hi, Kelly James, 11 Bernhard Drive. Hi, good evening. I'm Kelly. I have a kindergartner at Hurlbut and a third grader at Wes. I'm also the Hurlbut PTO president this year and next year, and a WIS PTO executive board member. My family is one of many that moved here 2.5 years ago. Can you hear me? I enthusiastically support the proposal to build a new middle school in our community. I firmly believe that investing in education infrastructure is essential for the growth and development of our youth and the prosperity of our beloved Weston community. Tonight, I urge you to vote yes. Yes to investing in education for the future of our community. Yes to a learning environment that fosters academic excellence and social emotional learning. Yes to attracting and retaining talented educators for our students. And yes to a modern, green educational facility that meets the needs of 21st century learners. This process allows many checks and balances along the way, but tonight you have the first opportunity to say yes to Weston children, and I hope you will do just that. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gus Christensen. I live at 65 Northfield Road. I step up to the microphone today to say that I trust in our elected officials to make good decisions in the long-term interests of the town. America has representative democracy for a reason. The comparisons between the various options for the school complex are complex. And while I follow these issues much more closely than the vast majority of my fellow citizens, I still recognize that the elected members of the Board of Education are the relevant elected and appointed officials of the town, and the towns and the school system's professional staff know more than I do about the construction costs and space utilization issues. And I trust in their judgment and look forward to the advancement of their plans.
Susan Barron, Old Tide Road. I'm not as prepared as everybody else because I had no idea that this meeting was going to happen because there's no transparency. And I just found out on the Connecticut, our town website, whatever, that this was happening. I guess my big question is, how did this get so bad? How did you all let this building get so bad? Every one of you are accountable for this building getting bad. I did not send my children here. This is my second home. My children went to private school in New York City. But I am just appalled that we're sitting here and talking about spending so much money. You would never let your homes get this way. And I'm just shocked. But the other thing is, we're talking to an architectural firm. Why aren't we talking to a management consulting firm to talk about how we can make our schools better, our buildings better, more efficient? Maybe we should be at a three schools, and maybe there should be a gymnasium. My son went to Dalton. They built a gymnasium. They send all the lower kids over on a bus to the gymnasium. Make this that. But I can't see all this money that we're spending. And I don't know if any of your children will see it. But I think everybody on this board is accountable. And there are plenty of people in town who have children who don't even attend the school. They go to private school. They don't even come to our schools. And that's also a problem. And I think the children deserve an education, a good education, to have all the facilities and everything that they need. But you all have dropped the ball. You all have dropped the ball. And it's very, very disappointing. And I, as a resident, know nothing about what's going on with the Board of Ed. And that should come to me as well. I'm a resident and I pay taxes. And going forward, I would like to get information about what's going on in this town. That's it.
Next speaker, please.
Hey, good evening. My name is Stephanie Feingold, and I live at 3 Pink Cloud Lane. I am the mother of 3 kids in the Weston School District, an 8th grader completing middle school, a 5th grader who is about to start middle school, and a 3rd grader who I sincerely hope will see a new middle school in his 8th grade year. I have served as the PTO president of Hurlbut. I will be the PTO president of WIS next year, and I have served on the middle school PTO executive board for the past 3 years. It would be an understatement to say that I don't care incredibly much about all of the kids in our town. There's no doubt that the caliber of teaching and the education that our kids receive at our middle school is top rate. The leadership of the administration, expertise and dedication of our teachers, and the care that all the staff put into the kids is something that I am thankful for every day. However, there's also no doubt in my mind that we are selling our kids and our town short by not providing them with the facilities that match the caliber of teaching inside of it. This is not just about providing them with something shiny and new. This is about providing the kids with a space that is safe and not a hazard, that functions as it could and should, that offers a 21st century space that the entire community can utilize, that has a smaller footprint and is more efficient so that it saves us money in operating, and that is bright and light so that it inspires rather than depresses. The tax investment that we all need to make is not something that I take lightly. But for me, the decision comes down to whether we feel that Weston's kids are worth investing in. I believe that they are. I strongly support the Build As New plan. It is not only less disruptive to the kids, it is actually not disruptive at all. To my 5th grader's relief, she will remain in the current building during construction. It is faster by a margin of at least 2 years, and my current 3rd grader now has hope that after all the impact that he endured during COVID, he will at least reap the benefits of a new school for 1 year. And as we have heard from the experts, and likely know from our own home renovations, it will be less expensive in the long run. I moved here during COVID and sent my kids to schools never having seen the inside of them. I just saw the facade and I heard the rumors. The first day that tours were offered by Superintendent Barbiero, I lined up and saw all 4 schools back to back, starting with the high school. And to be honest, I don't think that the middle school looked like the rumors that I had heard. In fact, it made me nostalgic for the Blue Ribbon award-winning elementary school that my kids attended in New York City. That school was dated, but I embraced its history. We had more than 30 kids per class, but the teachers were phenomenal. The hallways were dark, the acoustics gave you a headache, the bathrooms were scary, and there were even bars on the windows, but that just added to its character. I loved that school. And then I walked into WIS, and it hit me. This is why people move out of the city when their children are school age. This light, bright, efficient space with all the educational amenities one could hope to give their child was here. This was the suburban public school dream. Last Thursday, I helped welcome 2nd grade parents into WIS for the first time, and the look on their face echoed mine and said it all. Their eyes widened and jaws dropped when they entered that light, bright-filled lobby. And then I heard that a pair of 5th grade tour guides were asked if they were excited to go to middle school. And their answer was, quote, "Not really. WIS is so nice, and the middle school is dark and broken." This broke my heart, and I hope it breaks yours too, because we have an opportunity to do better. How our kids feel about their schools, how much pride Westonites have in our schools, and the reputation of our schools in the wider community matters. After all, Weston is defined by its school district. Many of our surrounding towns have or are embarking on new school projects, and I don't want Weston to be left behind. A failure to submit a grant application by June 30th just delays the inevitable another year. There will be
I'm sorry, your 5 minutes are up.
Okay. There will be time for the town to weigh in, but it's incumbent upon you, the Board of Education, to show leadership on this educational imperative. I implore you to please vote yes. Thank you.
Is there another speaker? Thank you. Please state your name and address, and then your 5 minutes will begin.
Sure. Hi, I'm Annalise Catone Ferrara. I've been in Weston since 2011, and we came here for two reasons. Number one, we tried to escape terrorism because we were really affected by 9/11, and I also had a young child who was attending the schools. The school that he attended here was the middle school, and it was a Blue Ribbon School of Excellence. Then he went to the high school, and it was a Blue Ribbon School of Excellence. The schools are not Blue Ribbon Schools of Excellence today, so I don't think building a brand new school is going to change that. I think what we should be doing is investing in teachers and equipment, more math classes, more physics classes. That's what we should be doing with our money. Excuse me, I have some notes here. Okay, why is the building run down? How old is the building? I don't know. And what I would like to know is why aren't the people in charge of the town, the executives, telling the town residents what's going on? There has to be some way to find out what is going on in the town. I'd like to know what the discussions were over the years. I'd like to know what the conditions of the buildings are. What is the problem? Do we need new air conditioning? Do we need new windows? What do we need? In order for me to find out, I have to go digging into the town records. I have to go to town hall. I have to find out on my own. I think it would be nice if the town were to tell us, this is the website you can go to, this is the address you can go to, this is the page you should look at. This way we can make an informed decision, because once we know what the problems really are with the school, maybe we'll all agree. But not knowing makes it very difficult for people like me to decide what to do with my hard-earned money. What else? Okay, so a prior speaker had addressed the fact that the new school would be 104,000 square feet, whereas the old school is actually 167,000 square feet. I think those are the numbers. So there's an extra 60,000 square feet that we're going to be throwing away that we could possibly use towards town offices. Segregate part of the building, this building here, and maybe make town offices out of it. Why would we throw away 60,000 square feet of a building just like that? It doesn't make any sense. And then we want to lease more modular units for 5 more years at the cost of $2 million or $2.5 million. By the way, tearing down the building is not very green. I don't think it's going to have a great impact on our environment. Maybe there's a better way of doing it. Honestly, there's got to be a better way of doing it. So I would like to know why the building needs to be replaced. I'd like to be able to find out without having to do my own digging, and I'd like to make my own intelligent decision. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kate Worrell. I live on Birch Hill Road. I have 3 children in the school system. 2 at the middle school here and 1 at their final year of Hurlbut. Super sad that we're leaving Hurlbut. It's a great family there. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but hearing everybody else's comments, I just wanted to share my input that I really enjoy the middle school. I think, Mr. Doak, you do a wonderful job. I have a 8th grader who is very, very great student. Just takes everything as it comes, excels, wonderful. My 6th grader is in special ed who has difficulties, and it has not been until this year that we have felt heard and supported. And I really thank his team this year for all the support that he has gotten. I think WIS is a wonderful school. Again, Ms. Falber, a lifesaver for my previous 3 years. I think it's a beautiful school, it's a bright school, but it's a simple school. There are classrooms, there aren't any science labs, there's not a separate gym, it's a cafetorium, so it might look pretty, but it's not really doing much for our students there. When they come here to the middle school, they have places to go, they have the think tank, they have science labs, they have places, music labs, things to do here, things to expand on their education and prepare them for the high school, which again, I'm learning gives so many opportunities outside of just simple math classes, science classes, and so forth. Again, my daughter is very into art, and she's looking forward to all that possibilities of art classes next year. So with all that being said, I just think and hope that everybody at this table can really consider everybody else's views on slowing the process down, taking into consideration all different ways that we could do this, and possibly go to a 3-school system. My daughter, her biggest fear for going into high school is, once again, going to another school where she doesn't know where things are. And same thing with my youngest, going into 3rd grade, another school where I have to learn where things are. That's a lot every 3 years. Okay, it's a whole new grade, it's a whole new environment, it's a whole new group of teachers. So I think 3-school system would help the community cut back on taxes, cut back on operating expenses, and keep the kids a little calmer knowing that that big change in life doesn't have to come every 3 years. It may only come 2 times. So again, thank you everybody for all of your time. I know this is not an easy job, and I appreciate the listening to everybody. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you. State your name and your address, please, and then your 5 minutes will begin.
Chris Kimberly, 3 Broad Street, Weston. I didn't come here prepared to speak, so I'm going to make it brief. I don't know if any of you know the most important determination of a child's success in school, what that is. It's not the building, it's not the teachers, it's not the administration. It's actually parental support for education. If parents value education, that's where good education happens. That's number one. Number 2 is, in this town, are our schools good because of the teachers or because of the tutors half the parents in the town hire to teach their kids? I'd like to think it's the teachers. There are a lot of great teachers in town. I'd like to see this town supplement their education with maybe a writing lab after school. Do any of our kids learn how to write in school? If you ask the kids, they're lucky if they write 2 essays a year in English. We could have a math after class program. We could have a history after class program. We could have science after class. I know nobody appreciates science anymore. But enough with that. Parents in town, administrators in town love to tout when we get kids into Ivy League schools and little Ivies. I hope all those kids are prepared to go to school in classrooms that were built some up to 200 years ago. I sat in chairs that were over 100 years old in college. Now they're almost 200 years old. It's not the rooms that teach. You pay for the professors, you pay for the teachers. Let's upgrade our teachers. Let's upgrade our professors. Let's hire some professors. My daughter is going to be teaching early college experience in school. They get college credit in high school. Okay? We can do that. We can improve the learning. And my last comment is, this is a great school system. It is not great buildings. And if we're going to waste all our money again, take our eye off the prize, which is teaching the kids, and focus on, oh, I want this in the building. I want that. I don't want this kind of ceiling. I want this. I want that. You know, the answer is, I want a great education for all the kids. And I don't think a building is the way to go. I'd love to see us renovate all the buildings, bring technologically up to speed, bring better teachers in, offer more classes. But why waste $130 million to tear what we're sitting in right now that seems to be working okay for this meeting, tear it down and not focus on the prize, which is a kid's education? Thank you.
Good evening. Tom Sosha, Deer Run Trail. I'd like to thank the educators in the room. I would also like to thank the entire Board of Ed. I appreciate your time and your service to the town. I was watching on YouTube and I was compelled to come in. What struck me most is the fact that we don't have all of the facts that have been presented to the town. My concern is that the train is about to leave the station when it comes to getting this grant. The grant that we're looking for is only one of the options. And once that train starts going, well, we got the grant for this particular new building. Suddenly, we are now going to be looking at a November potential townwide vote. That train has left that station. We have an opportunity now to look at all the different options. There have been many discussions about what had happened in Westport, which was a $35 million renovation, almost as new. I have a family member who teaches in that building. It was not that disruptive. It was a 2.5-year process. And I don't think the entire town really understands and appreciates how much more money goes into that renovate as new. That was in the presentation. When you add another 2 years, it is significantly higher because of the 4 different phases. And I get the fact that, well, it's going to be disruptive to students. It will be disruptive no matter what happens, whether it's going to be a new construction or renovate as new. How long is it going to be disruptive? That's, if you take everybody out of the school, reallocate while it's being renovated or as new. Either way, it is going to be disruptive. Please, just give us all the options. Tell us how much it's going to cost the town with a projection, not only for this particular project, the middle school. Please tell us what it's going to cost to renovate the other buildings, when that is going to happen, and also what is going to be the tax impact. It's not rocket science. Just give us all the information. And then as members of the community, once we have all that information, how it's going to be impacting financially, we understand how it could potentially impact kids. But we don't have all that information to make that decision. Please, just give us the information. That's all I'm asking. So we can all make an informed decision. Thank you for your time and your helping us all out. Thanks.
Is there anybody else for public comment tonight? Thank you, Chairman. Back to you. I'm sorry, there is one more.
Hi, Travis Worrell, Birch Hill Road. I have 3 kids in the school system currently, and I'd like to say, first of all, thank you very much for coming before us with these, a lot of plans, a lot of things, a lot of meetings I'm sure you went through to get all these together. I've been paying attention for 8 years to these meetings, showing up relentlessly, either online or in person, listening to many different iterations of this, many different Tecton presentations, many different FOIA emails that I've read, and it seems that there are many other different plans for this to move forward and give us a building that our kids can be educated in that feels a lot better than this one. I have concerns regarding the proposal set forth by our Board of Education. They're on the brink of being presented, that we are being on the brink of being presented with a singular option, a $122 million school build accompanied by an $88 million bond, potentially ballooning to over $96 million because of the average 10% that you don't think about. Yet amidst this grandiose plan, crucial questions remain unanswered. Where is the $30 million equivalent in 2017, now probably to $50 million, that the BOE's own presentation fails to account for tonight? We have other schools that need upkeep, and we paid money for these presentations. We paid money for these surveys. I don't understand why we didn't act on them back in 2017. To me, that almost seems like it was a plan to just set this up for... Is there a reason why my mic's going down off and on? It seems like there was a plan to set it up to where we now have just the option of rebuilding or redoing the whole school. There's also $15 million which was earmarked by the STEAM study, which include essential upgrades to the police station, currently housing the employees that are in portables behind the administration building, as well as a town hall, among other projects. We have a $4.6 million paving bond that for some reason was removed from the capital budget coming up that we're going to be voting on. I don't suggest you vote that one down because we really need paving. The proposal reeks of borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, but in our case it's borrowing from WIS, from the high school, and from Hurlbut. And let's not forget that all these schools need a little work. This one needs the most. Put the money to fixing it. Westport just did it for $30-something million by just renovating the school. Don't tear it down and show our kids that we could just throw away things and just pay money to buy new ones. Teach them to be good environmental stewards of our communities and our neighborhood, and to work with things that we have. We're one of the top producing districts. And if you're going to tell me this school has been this bad for so long, which is what I've heard tonight, it obviously hasn't affected our kids one bit because of our educators. Very happy with the educators in these buildings. I think they deserve more support, more funding, and this building does not deserve all of it. Thank you.
Greetings.
Can I just have your name and your address, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
My name is Carrie Queenie, and I live on Kelvin Road. Thank you all for your time and impressive talent that you share for our kids and community. I'm a mother of 3. I possess a background as a school and clinical psychologist and have worked and volunteered in many districts. I am also one of those many parents and recent home buyers who moved here during the pandemic for Weston's crown jewel. I admittedly was eye-poppingly surprised when we toured the middle school building for our twin boys. The building is antiquated and no match for the first-rate education delivery we covet. And yes, folks, it all matters. Prospective educators are seeking both, and home buyers are looking for both. Planning estimates are clear. The longer we wait, the stunningly steeper the cost, and our kids miss out. That includes our 3rd child who enters the middle school in the fall. We absolutely need to move forward with prudent planning and building to maintain Weston's crown jewel reputation and all our property values. Thank you.
Is there anybody else for public comment tonight? That's the end of public comment.
Just before we end this part of the evening, I'd like to thank everyone who came out this evening to speak to the board. It's important to get public comment, pro or con, whatever you want to talk about. but seriously, it's 8 o'clock at night, 8:15 at night, and you've taken part of your evening to come to speak to us, and as a board, we'd like to thank you. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is a discussion with Tecton regarding the Weston Middle School project.
So I would just like to mention that the reason a great many of those documents were posted was that the Board of Education wanted to see the scope of the work that was needed in the other schools. That's why the 2017 documents were posted, as well as the presentation that Jeff and Antonia gave. The idea is to be able to reference it if you need to reference any of the slides, because for those people that need to see it visually, it's not to go through the entire presentation again. And we also have 2 board members that are here with us that did not get a chance to ask questions of Tecton. And we certainly want to make sure that Chad and Michael have the opportunity to ask their questions as part of this discussion. And I'm going to move. We're going to move over here in case we have to project something. I don't want to be obstructing the view.
You did, because I don't think we're presenting, but. So while we're working on pulling up the slide deck, good evening, everybody. My name is Jeff Wazinski. I'm principal at Tecton Architects.
Good evening. My name is Antonia Ciavarella. I am an architectural designer at Tecton Architects.
So as the superintendent referenced, we gave a fairly lengthy and robust presentation last week. The presentation that we have this evening, which should be dated the 20th. The 20th has a couple more slides in it. Has a few more slides in it, really just related to there were some questions on the overall schedule and the process, so we included those in case there were more detailed questions. And of course, we've also included the educational specification document and posted that via PDF. There's about 184 pages of contents that's specific to a proposed new middle school. That's the ed spec, and then there's another 150 pages or so of appendix information that collects some of the previous presentations. So we're here this evening to, of course, answer any questions you may have. If there's areas that the committee would like us or the board would like us to review, because there's a more robust public here tonight, we'd be happy to do so. But at this point, we'll answer any questions that you may have from our presentation last week or the materials that were submitted. Yeah, I was kind of buying some time until we got the right.
This is the first time I was on FOC. It's the first time actually seeing the two of you in real life, I think. I want to go over there and just make sure you're real, but usually you're on like a screen on my computer, so it's actually good that you do exist, the two of you.
We do. We are actually people.
Heard so much about you.
So the plan, I think, tonight was to not go over the presentation that is dated the 20th as they find it, but we certainly can give a brief overview if that's the preference of the committee, of the board.
Rather than going through it again,
Sure.
Just because it is a lengthy presentation and it is available online, so if anybody wants to take a look at it online, we'd rather not make this a midnight meeting. We have gone through this already. You said there are some additions in the presentation. Do you want to just touch on those additions before, and then maybe we could open it up to questions from the 2 board members that weren't here, and then I think we all have additional questions too.
Sure. After you can turn this off.
That flight crashed.
Okay, so once they find the, great. So really it's the second to last slide. So there were quite a few questions last week relative to the overall process, timing, those kinds of questions. So one piece that we didn't have in the presentation for the 15th, but we did have it in the meeting for the 20th here, is the second to last slide in the deck, which is an overall schedule. And when we pull that up, it illustrates the grant application process, which is, and it's very simplified schedule, but it's a grant application process. In the green, there's a design phase related to if the community were to proceed with the new middle school. There's a design phase related to that. And then, of course, the construction phase. So just one more slide. There you go. Perfect. Thank you so much. So this slide we did show last week, but let me just kind of recap it here. So as I mentioned last week, the grant application, the deadline is June 30th of every year, right? That gets submitted electronically to the state. The state then essentially takes the summer into the fall and reviews all of the grant applications and prepares what's called a priority list. That priority list is all the grant applications that are complete and published on December 15th of this year. In that priority list, they'll group the grant applications in priority A, B, and C. For those that they feel are the most need would be in priority A, and then so on and so forth, B and C. From there, your grant application is not approved. It then goes through the legislative process for the spring session and ultimately would be approved. And I know the session just wrapped up, so the grant applications are approved typically the following year in the May, June timeframe. So that is kind of the cycle for the grant application itself. The middle color blue underneath where it says design phase. So the design phase to get all the necessary approvals for your project, to put all the details together, the plans, specifications, make sure all of the various different components are incorporated into the project, likely takes about a year and a half, 16 to 18 months. So that puts you pretty much in the middle of the slide in Q4 of 2025. Then you would put it out to bid for about probably 3 months with all the scope leveling, and then start construction. I'm going to move this over here so I can talk without leaning. Start construction, and a building of this size, about I think it's around 104,000 or so, is about 18 to 20 months to build. And with a projected fall completion date to open the new building in the fall of 2027, and then once that building is occupied, you can then work on demolishing and or renovating, or demolishing portions of this building and or renovating the remainder portion. So in this plan, we have, even as consistent with the previous planning options that we looked at several years back, it is anticipated that we would structurally separate the pool and new gym portion of the building and keep that as a standalone freestanding building, separate with utilities for community use overall. Now, we've heard plenty of comments from the public about preserving maybe a slightly larger portion of the existing building for town offices and those kinds of components. That is possible, and technically really doesn't affect the grant application to the state. One other piece of, I guess, clarity that I want to make sure everybody understands is the grant application carries virtually no risk to the community until they're ready to proceed with the next phase. Now, the plan for this grant application is that you submit all the necessary information with exception to the funding for the project by June 30th. The funding for the project, meaning the referendum, needs to be submitted, the results of that need to be submitted before November 15th. So what it means, for, from a community perspective, should the boards and the community proceed with submitting a June 30th grant application, you essentially have from that point on to whenever you set your referendum date, which would likely be sometime in early fall, to have additional community conversations. At any point, you are not fixed into building. You don't have to build. Even if your grant application is approved, you do not have to proceed with the project. You can stop it at any time. So hopefully this schedule and some of that information related to the application process provides some clarity, but certainly happy to answer any other further questions related to that. Oh, and if there's one other slide, and thank you, Antonia. It is 1, 2, 3, 4. About 15 slides in. So if you just go backwards, I'll tell you when to stop. I think this is an important. Keep going, keep going. Right there. Right there. Thank you. Okay. So this slide was also added. And I think this is another important slide because we also heard, I think, tonight's public comment, but also last week, about contingencies, escalation. This thing's going to turn from 100 and what was published to something more. What's important in the grant planning application process is there's two components, and for those that are in the industry know it very well. But there's we're using total project costs for the overall project, right? So we're saying your new building is essentially $112 million total project cost. That includes two components: the construction costs on the left-hand side, so all your site costs, all your demolition, all your new construction, soup to nuts as far as anything built that's fixed in the building. And I used the analogy last week, I'll use it again tonight. You take this building, pull it off the ground, turn it upside down and shake it. Everything that comes out, the tables, the chairs, architects, the engineers, all of that is soft costs. So the construction costs are the physical assets, which is on the left-hand side. The soft costs are on the right-hand side. The reason why I bring this up is because in the soft costs, there's not only construction contingency, but there's also owner contingency. So in those total, in and around about 10% of the construction costs. So when you're looking at it, on a build of about $78 million of construction costs, you're carrying about an $8 million contingency overall. I just wanted to illustrate that because I know there's a few questions there. So with that, I will stop and answer any more detailed questions.
I have a lot of questions, not surprisingly.
How did I know?
Yeah, let me jump in just because I wasn't at the previous one, if that's okay. Are you chomping at the bit, David?
I always am.
Always
but
are.
Chad, I'll defer to you.
Yeah, I'll ask a few just because. What'd you say? You got multiple. I'm going to ask a first question, which is, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm really asking it for the benefit of the public. And I've really enjoyed all my dealings with both of you, so don't take this personally at all. But nothing about what we're doing tonight, nor if we would submit the grant, locks us into using, if we were to proceed, locks us into using Tecton as a provider. And you would be comfortable, again, if we would go through this, going through an RFP process where we're evaluating multiple potential vendors, correct?
You have to, by state statute, you have to go out to RFP process, up to 4 qualified through an entire process for your architects and engineers, your owner's project manager, and should you choose a construction manager at risk delivery system, same process. So state statute, clean slate, start over, entirely new process, typically driven by the building committee.
Yep. Okay. And the other question I want to ask is the same one, so forgive my redundancy here, but I think it's one of the crucial questions we have to be addressing, and I think it's worth raising again. It's one of the same ones I asked in one of the other EOC meetings, which is, I think this reimbursement number at the, at the higher reimbursement rate matters a lot to the viability of this project. And I'm curious what your confidence is in us getting reimbursed at that higher rate versus the lower one.
Yeah,
and if you need me to get more background about that,
no,
I'm assuming that shorthand works of like the two reimbursement rates.
Yeah, no, I thank you for the question. I'm fairly certain. I think you may have asked it at the EOC, and I'll give a similar answer. There's no guarantees on the percentage. We think we have a compelling argument related to renovate as new versus new, showing that it provides best value to the community and in turn best value to the state. That's a state statute 10285. I think it's C. I will find it and make sure because I know people will be looking it up. 10-285A is the state statute that basically where you are to prove the most economical solution possible to the state. So no guarantees. Unfortunately, it would come likely after referendum. It typically comes further into the process. We can certainly open up a dialogue with the state to see if there's a willingness to entertain and evaluate the grant application based on the state statute. So no guarantees. We've been successful in similar and related projects in the past. But again, the past isn't a predictor of the future. In this case, the state holds the cards in that aspect. Yep.
Okay. This is a question that probably no builder has ever been asked. So, how about some novelty here? How much room is there within this for downward pressure on pricing? What I mean by that is, like, do labor costs ever go down? Do material costs ever go down? And given that we're talking like a 4 or 5 year timeline, again using the word if we were to proceed with this, can we make this cheaper?
Yeah. So again, I think this is a great question and a great topic to make sure that the community understands as well. So the last 3 to 4 years have been something that I haven't seen in my career, and I've been 25 years into it. With the extreme escalation, the ability to, lack of availability to find, trade subcontractors, the list goes on and on. So it's been a challenging last 3 years from an escalation perspective. In fact, I think this last session, the state actually amended making sure that grant applications starting 2025 require a 10% contingency as a standard, I believe. I don't know if that passed. I know it was draft language. So where I'm going with this is that the plan that we put forward and the numbers that we put in place, yes, they're eye-popping to any community. Understand that. Our job is to make sure that the grant application is as comprehensive and as complete as possible and protects the community. Do you have to spend $112 million? No. If you find a better way to spend it, build the same building, same quality. All of our numbers are based on historical averages in the mid-range. So they're not, the high end of the construction market. They're not the low end, building that you're going to need to worry about in 10, 15 years. So it's a good, solid, durable building, middle of the range. The grant application, what we don't want to do is go back to the state for a reauthorization for an increased grant application, something that many, many communities had to go through, and believe me, it was not enjoyable to go through a second referendum again because of costs. So I think we're being responsible. I think we're being appropriate in our planning, and I will tell you, whether it's whoever is working on the project, that value will be 112 less the number. That's the target. I mean, we're a conservative approach, and I think it's the responsible thing to do at this phase of the project.
Understood. Okay, I may ask more questions as we go, but I can hand it off to somebody else.
You have some questions you haven't had a chance to.
Yeah, no, thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. I have a couple just quick questions here on the reimbursement process and those rates. I think we've heard a lot of commentary tonight from the community. I think some of them have felt as if we don't have enough information, right, to move forward. Clearly, this grant process is really important to the town. So I'm curious just around this reimbursement process, how volatile are the reimbursement rates from year to year? Is that something that changes at the state level dramatically from year to year, or is that relatively consistent?
So, great question. I should have covered it. I apologize. So they publish a list, and the list is fixed. So when you submit your grant application, you know the percent reimbursement that you're getting in that grant year. So that is absolutely predictable. So they do change it based on a variety of different factors. There's a calculation online if people are interested on how they get to your 11.07%, your 21.07%. So it does change. There's a PDF on the state DAS website that publishes a list. It's out to 2024. Typically they update it. Well, they update it every year. But your rate would be the published 2024 rate if you were to submit a grant application this June.
Right, but if you're looking, let's say the go forward. So I think, again, just to make sure we have all options on the table.
Mm-hmm.
When you look in the past at the annual reimbursement rates, have they been relatively consistent and stable, or are they pretty volatile?
No, they're pretty consistent. In fact, that same chart will illustrate, I think it's 3 or 4 years previously. So you can kind of see the change. It's pretty modest. In fact, I think Weston's has been pretty consistent over the last few years. Maybe, tenths of a percentage point, I think, change. Don't quote me, but it's all available, and the history is there, so you can see what they've done in the past.
Got it. Okay, great. No, I appreciate that. And then secondly, my second question is, I think someone was concerned, I think a few people actually were concerned that even though I don't think we are obligated to move forward with the plan, should the grant be awarded to us, I think there was some concern, there has been some concern in terms of some of the commentary tonight that the train would be moving and that to not accept the grant would be, there would be a lot of pressure to not accept the grant basically on the part of the town, right, going forward. And so I guess my question to you is, have there been instances in the past in which a district has been awarded a grant and did not accept the grant?
That's a good question. I don't.
Has that ever happened?
It hasn't happened to me or to our firm. There have been some grants where they've actually gone back, and I mentioned this at the meeting last week, where they've changed the content of the grant. The EDO 49, I think it's F. So you get one shot at modifying your grant application inclusive of the ed spec after you have grant approval. So I believe I know some communities have changed from renovate as new to new.
Okay.
I don't know. I know that for a fact. This happened this past year. I don't know if, for example, they've gone the opposite way. But to answer your question, kind of as far as the train left the station, there's a possibility there's an opportunity, there's an avenue where you would file that grant application modification. You get one shot at it, and you could change it to something different than what was submitted. Meaning, so there's, not to complicate everything, but there's probably a dozen or so types of grant application. Renovate is new, alteration, extension, new. So you could go back and modify the type of project if you wished to, if the community wished to do so.
Okay, so you've seen that they've been modified, but not necessarily not accepted.
I haven't. We haven't been part of a grant application that was not put on the priority list and approved. But there's a lot of work that goes into it to make sure you're comprehensive and complete. I mean, the obvious biggest one and the first question that they typically ask is, was the community supportive, and at what percent were they supportive? It doesn't really matter. I mean, they want to understand the background and history. So, and just one other comment on that with the state, and we heard a lot about previous studies and there was a lot of work leading up to today as far as previous studies, us included, other firms included. The state also wants to see that you actually have studied it for a while and understand that your options, you're putting, the best option forward that after looking at it comprehensively in all your schools. So you're doing all the right steps. It's, the dialogue with the community as to, is this the right one,
Great, thanks, appreciate it.
Sure.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So, to your point of they want to see that we've been putting our time and effort into determining various options and what we have available. I'm thinking back to the FOC and what was presented in, I think it was May of 2022, so 2 years ago. And we had a variety of options that were given to us at that time. And basically I think we dropped the ball. So we had this option given to us, and it was a more comprehensive option in that we were addressing not just the middle school, we were looking at the campus as a whole. So there were options in there with Hurlbut, which I think, Hurlbut needs love too. So there was options in there with Hurlbut, taking care of some of the capital projects that we need to with WIS and in the high school, addressing the portables and also the middle school. And it was 2 years ago, and one of the options, well, they ranged basically between 97 and 99 million for those projects that were addressing all 4 buildings. And there was a new construction in there as well. So I guess I'm curious as to how we went from that to a single building only. And I seriously am asking, I'm not quite sure how we, in the 2 years, went from a project that embraced all 4 buildings to just a new construction for more. And I realize that time is money, but that's a big jump. So can you explain to me how where in the process we went from looking at that, addressing the campus as a whole to just doing the middle school?
I'm not quite sure if I'm the correct representative to answer. So there was, from our perspective and our engagement process, our work ended in that range, in that time period, where we did an awful lot of work through the FOC and provided comprehensive options across the board. We were then re-engaged to look at basically some planning options related to the middle school, and I'm not sure if I'm the appropriate party to answer both town and school projects, to be quite honest with you. But
let me ask then on the board, is there anybody on the board that's aware of why we went from a comprehensive, or in the administration, as to why we went from a comprehensive plan to just a middle school plan? Was there a specific need that I'm not aware of, or anyone?
I mean, I could tell you from when I was on the FOC, we singularly focused on the middle school. There really wasn't much discussion about Hurlbut. There really wasn't any discussion about the high school. And I think there was a brief conversation on occasion about could we do anything to WIS in order to accommodate the students and do nothing, close the middle school. I don't think there was ever a discussion.
Yeah, no, we studied, sorry to interrupt, and I could stop if you want, but we studied Hurlbut, WIS in the middle school. The high school was basically off the table for us. And then towards the conclusion of the study of those 3 buildings, we were then asked to look at the town buildings, which we did.
Right.
And then we also provided comprehensive plans for school and town buildings. There's an awful lot in there, so I can't quote every option, but So one other piece, just as a point of clarification related to the school projects. So regardless if it was one project or, 3 projects altogether, each building is its own grant application. So that's an important piece that I think is a fact that I'm not quite sure everybody understands, including the community. So if you went ahead with a comprehensive plan, like you had mentioned, the 97 million for 3 schools, each one of those would have had to have its own grant application, separate grant application. You could separate everything essentially. So, and the same if the Board of Ed offices were contemplated. There is reimbursement eligible for that. It's 50% of your standard reimbursement, but it's still reimbursement available to you, and that would be its own grant application too. So we've done middle schools in particular where we've done whether it's a renovator or new middle school with BOE offices or leadership offices, and those would be 2 grant applications going in at once. So
Okay.
just for
No, that's actually helpful to understand that and know that. I mean, I'm learning as well. But, Michael, to your comment and to everyone who came here and spoke tonight too, I just think that there's just a lot of information that we all need to know in order to feel comfortable moving this forward and making sure that we have the buy-in of the community. This is a big ticket, right? So you answered another question that I had, so I'll pause and let somebody else take a question. I know David's got a few.
Yeah, I have 2 groups of questions. One would be one group would be for Tecton, and I think the other ones are more conversation among Board of Ed. So for the purposes of efficiency, I'm going to just do the Tecton questions. So I think it is important to go back to what tonight's vote means to the community, because I have a different understanding potentially than what my colleagues here have relative to what it means if we vote yes tonight, and I'm sorry, let me back up, and the community who wants to advance this to the next level for interactive public comment. This came up at our meeting last week where it was determined you can't have interactive public comment, and therefore to really engage with the community, we have to move this to the next step. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if we vote yes tonight, the train has left the station on build new. That is the grant that we are going to ask you to write. That's the grant we're going to ask you to submit to the state. That is the grant the state is going to consider. So when we move to conversations with the community, whether it's at the Board of Selectmen, which seems to be the next stop, next train station, and the community says, we want to see other options that were presented. We want to know why Westport rebuilt or renovated their middle school for $32 million. We want to see the Board of Finance model a $88 million bond. The train has left at that point. And the community's only option when it gets to the Board of Selectmen is to talk about and ask questions related to building a new middle school. Other options that's not the time to consider other options. And then when we get to the referendum, it's a binary question that's going to be asked of the community. And you can cut the question a couple of different ways. You can simply say, are you for the bond or are you against the bond? Or just let's be realistic, the way Weston operates, are you for education or are you against education? Are you for a future or are you against a future? So my question really is, am I incorrect that what we are asking for a vote on tonight is to move forward, build new, and that is the design that's going to leave the train station, and the conversations that we can have with the community are going to be questions they may have about build new. The option to look at what Westport did, the option to bond less, the option for other potential ways to do it. That's not what we're talking about. That's not what we're voting on.
Okay, so the grant application that the educational spec is written on is written on the idea of a new school building. So that would be when you submit the electronic grant application, you have to pick one of the dozen or so types of grant applications. You would select new. We had an earlier conversation and question, can it change? Can you change that grant application? Yes, you can change it once. You can change it to renovate as new. If so that's the answer. I'm not sure about trains and those kinds of things, but you're submitting the grant application, a new grant application. You have the ability to change it to something different through that one means, which is the EDO 49F. So I guess to answer your question in short, what we technically need from the Board of Education to submit the grant application is the approval of the ed spec. And this ed spec is written around a new school building.
So if we move this forward and the community overwhelmingly provides feedback to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance models and the two combined, the community simply says, we can't stomach an $88 million or $100 million bond, and we can stomach $40 million. Do you at that point use your one opportunity to change the request and you go from build new to we're going to replace we're going to essentially, for simplicity purposes tonight, we're going to model ourselves after what Westport did? Is it that process? Is it that simple?
That's an option available to you, sure. Yep. I mean, there's plenty of other options. I don't want to speculate on as far as dollars, and if the community, if the Board of Finance has a certain number that's not supportive of what we're showing you tonight for a new build, I'm not quite sure. I mean, the last piece of the grant application that you need to submit before November 15th is the funding, the supportive funding. So my presumption is that if that was the case, I'm not sure you would be able to meet that deadline of November 15th to support this grant application. So the options that you have available to you are modifying the grant. To be quite honest, I'm not quite sure I've modified a grant prior to the December 15th deadline. In fact, I know I haven't done that. So.
Okay.
So before we go on, can I just clear up a misconception? People keep making comparisons to what Westport did, that's very two things. One, there was a mold issue at Coleytown Middle School. They weren't renovating the school; they were remediating a school that had serious mold issues and had to move every child out of that school for 2 years. Westport. So that's one. So there's no comparison there to what we're talking about tonight. And two, Westport is going through exactly what we're doing here. They've decided to build a new long lot school. It was either renovate as new or build a new school. The number that I've read is appreciably the same as what we're talking about here. So that's the comparison, not the remediation. I was on the Board of Finance in Westport at the time, not the remediation of Coleytown Middle School, which had to do with mold. And that was a serious situation that effectively closed that school for the better part of 2 years.
All right. So, okay. They rebuilt the school. They had to do new windows, new HVAC system, new ceiling tiles, new floor tiles. 2 years ago? Okay. My next question for Tecton. So we talk a lot about green initiatives, sustainability, being carbon neutral. There's about $4.5 million in both proposals for green initiatives. Where's the environmental impact study of knocking down the middle school?
We weren't asked to do one.
Okay. One more question, I believe, for Tecton. Yeah, please. No. Actually, the Westport one was my last question, so my remaining questions are really more for the board. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Antonia.
Thank you.
All right, Jeff, I have another question for you.
Sure.
Sorry. We just went through a little bit of a second referendum here in town as far as capital budgets are concerned, as I'm sure you know, and we're all really tired of voting. And yet we still have probably we have a very contested, it's going to be a very active presidential election season coming up as well. So there's going to be a lot of noise going on. We have a 45-day blackout period before a referendum, which we can't really do any town halls to meet with people. That takes us to the end of September. And people like to vacation. So I think it's really important for us to be able to communicate with the community to make sure that we do have the buy-in of the community. I support a new school, but I want to make sure that our neighbors understand the details and feel comfortable going to the polls and voting. So the timeline's going to be really tight. I want to ask if there's any wiggle room. And by that I mean, if we were to not do the referendum this November, but if we were to do it at a later date, maybe in the spring or another time. And by doing that, we wouldn't be able to apply for the grant this year. If we did that, we'd be applying for the grant next year. But that might give a little bit more time for us to have a communication and conversation with the community. If we do that, is there any possibility that we could do other work in the interim that would make it so that we don't lose an entire year? So some of the work that would be done while we're waiting to find out if the grant has been given to us, could we start doing that earlier on with the anticipation and hope that, you know, the referendum is going to pass and we're going to be able to move forward? Is that something that we could do so we don't, again, in the interest of time, I don't want to continue putting money into buildings if we're going to be tearing them down.
So let me make sure I have the question correctly. So if you push the referendum date past November 15th, my recommendation would be to submit the grant application for June 30th of next year. And so the work product that was created could still be utilized. There's some other work going on, you know, related to phase one and other checklist items that the material generated certainly can be used for next June. Some communities will, let's say you had I'll give you an example. If you had the community engagement process and you had a February referendum, right, let's say, and you wanted to, and it was successful and you wanted to continue on, you could, some communities start the design engagement process early in tandem with the grant application process. So they'll pull that kind of middle blue color back so that what you shouldn't do, or when you put the community at risk, is when you put a shovel in the ground before you have your approved grant authorization. So if, in other words, you don't want to start the deep blue until you get your letter saying your grant's approved. You can, it's just that % is at risk. So if you play it out and you kick it out a year, you could probably save some time and do some things, but it's kind of like a risk-reward piece.
Yeah, I'm looking at the state funding process and moving it forward a year, right?
Yep.
But having the design phase, 16 to 18 months in which we could start in the design phase so that we're not losing a whole year. Okay.
You could. Some communities that we've worked with do that. They have confidence in their government set up a little differently. Maybe it's council, board, town council, or something a little different, where they know what's. They have it kind of mapped out a little bit further out, so I guess they're comfortable with that risk. But that is certainly an option you can entertain to try to preserve some of the time frame on the back end of this project. Yeah.
Okay, and that risk that you mentioned, it would be basically funding the design phase. And what sort of price tag would that be? I guess a guesstimate. I can't hold you to this one, but just as a guesstimate,
Yeah.
what sort of a price tag would that be?
I typically fees these days for architects and engineers is in the, I would call it, they're 5.5% to 6.5% typically of total construction costs, not project costs. So that's an average range. I think you could probably pull some recent information from some of these communities that are going through that process now. But I think you'll find in that range is a good planning piece. And let me, it's not necessarily at risk. It's only at risk up until you have your final, letter from the state. So there's a risk there, but I don't know. I just want to make sure lay it out for everybody so they understand where the exposure is. So
I appreciate that. And I'm also trying to figure out what our options are. I don't want anyone to feel as if we are trying to push something down anyone's throat by any stretch of the imagination. No one likes that feeling. No one likes to feel rushed. So I'm trying to figure out how we can best work with the community to make sure that everyone's comfortable with whatever plan we put forward.
Understood.
My two questions did come to me. My question, Jeff, was, have we done a study that, I don't think this building is that bad. I think it doesn't look great. It's like a 60s ranch, right? No one necessarily wants a 60s ranch. Sorry if anyone here has a 60s ranch and they're in love with it, but have we done a study that looked at the useful life of the systems that have a useful life? Brick doesn't have a useful life to my knowledge. Okay, so for all the systems that have a useful life, have we done a study here that if we were to replace all the systems, whatever they may be, but not take a wrecking ball to the building, so the building footprint stays the same, do we have that cost or a study of that?
So I believe it was the 2017 study. The previous firm, before we were engaged at the FOC, conducted an existing conditions analysis and identified a list of items that needed to be remediated. They were at their end their useful life. During the FOC, I remember vividly looking at the various different building systems and showing what those replacement costs would be. So I'm sure all of that information is available.
Yeah, Sharon just showed me it was estimated at 32 to 39 million.
No. It was estimated about 60 million. It was 32 to 39 million plus an additional 17 million for, I didn't write down the specifics, but I wrote down the numbers that were in the thing. It came out to about 60 million.
Just for the middle school?
Yeah.
Okay. And then my last question is, I pulled up documentation from a defunct website, I think it's called Weston Today, but this woman that ran it has a ridiculous amount of archival information. On the surface, there's the appearance that the Army engineers or Corps of Army engineers have determined that some of the space that you've plotted the new building is actually in wetlands. Now that's just my untrained eye comparing to. Where you've plotted the new building, has that been validated as not being in wetlands?
So that's a great question. So the wetland, the placement of the building was based upon utilization of the current GIS, town GIS information, where maps wetlands, wetland soils. We're also acutely aware, and I think there was a question asked of a member of the public before we started the presentation about the conservation easements and all the items related to that. So we are aware of it. We understand it's a challenge. We talked about it at great length during the FOC. I remember because we were looking for placement of building additions for not only WIS, but we were looking at all the different schools. And it's just, you're land rich. It's just the usable land is pretty slim. So, and So building where we're proposing to build it diagrammatically isn't without its challenges, for sure, but we are aware of them, and they're shown on one of the diagrams in the first slide in the purple hue. So that certainly would need to be validated, flagged by a wetlands botanist, basically. And then there's, as you get into the detail, and this might be too much, there's high value, low value wetlands, and all kinds of analysis that's probably way over my head, and the botanist and the site civil engineer would plan out. But we understand they're there. We understand the easements. We understand their impact and the costs associated with it.
So every now and then I do agree with Sharon on some things. So to Sharon's point, or I can get around some of Sharon's ideas on occasion. No, but to Sharon's point, would we not be doing a service to the community if we slow down just a hair on the grant and vetted out some of these potential issues? Doesn't appear we would lose much time, and it would appear that we would be in a better position to have this conversation with the community, because we would know that where you've plotted the new building, for example, is not within the rich or the poor wetlands or whatever that was. That's my point, is that if we slow down, that question could probably be irrefutably answered. But it seems like we are plotting a new building because we've got to do something at least diametrically or diagraphically in order to put it into the grant.
I can't really speak to the time frame of moving this forward or not. We respond to what we're asked to do. So that's certainly a conversation for other parties. I will say that the state isn't looking for a design when you submit the grant application. And I think we spoke a little bit about this last week. What they're interested in is your application is complete, it's comprehensive, it speaks to, the ed spec is, I referred to, it's a playbook on what you want to do, where we show it, what it could look like. All of that is to come. The aesthetic, placement, 2-story, 3-story, 1-story, those are all conversations to come after. What the state is interested in is you've vetted the programmatic challenges, you understand the site constraints, you understand the existing building components. So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, but if we did have to shift the building because of wetlands, let's say there was wetlands and there was a 75-foot or 100-foot buffer, and we had to shift the building 100 feet over, 100 feet back, whatever, that would, just based on the diagram here, it would significantly impact, we would be literally building the building on top of a section of the middle school.
Yeah, I will tell you that, and if we had shown you examples of conceptual design where we started, where we think the greatest placement of the building is, to where we actually landed, they're completely different, and that's through an engagement process, learning. I mean, did anybody know that there's telecommunications lines between the high school and the middle school at various different points, and we're going to have to deal with those
Dan
too.
knows.
So,
and Dan knows what the cost to repair them is.
So,
Great job, Dan. Great job.
So those challenges are in here, and so that's, to my point, is it's really the outline framework to do the project. Yep.
But just, excuse me, just to be clear, there's no slow walking the grant. We either submit a grant by the 30th of June, or the next window is a year from now.
Those are the published deadlines. Certainly communities have petitioned through special legislation to change both grant application deadlines and reimbursement percentages. That window for opportunity is passed.
But the legislature is no longer in session.
That is correct.
Okay. So if we choose this evening not to go forward with the grant, the next window is a year from now. Well, effectively. Correct. June of next year. Okay.
Okay, one more question. Sorry. Looking back at the 2022 proposal, that because I was genuinely curious, you had proposed a build new And it was slightly smaller. Maybe that calls into, maybe that's why. It was 99,000, a little over 99,000 square feet, a new middle school, and you had the cost for that at the time, again in 2022, between 64.7 million and 67.5 million. That's a lot less than what we're proposing now. So I'm asking, can you explain to us the cost difference on that one?
So I don't have that information in front of me. I think there was, before we started the meeting, there was also a question from a member of the public. I'd be happy to study it and show you where we were back then and why we are where we are today. I'm 100% confident in my numbers that we've presented. And going through the last 3 years of what's happened to this industry in this region, I'm happy to discuss it with any of the Board of Ed, but let me provide that data to you so that you can feel confident that where we were with the 67 million to today, there's a clear line and delineation. So that's homework for us that I took away even before the meeting. But so let me do that rather than kind of speak off the cuff.
I'd really appreciate it. Thanks.
Sure.
And if I can add, I believe that if the project moves forward tonight, the next stop is the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen's opportunity to hear your presentation at the very beginning of June, and they will expect the answer to that question.
I had two quick questions. They're both around the idea of voting yes now or the 1 year delay and voting or beyond, approving it at that point. If we go ahead with the approval to go for the early grant deadline, the June 30th, and we decide to modify what our grant is there any implication to how that might affect our application? Are we more or less likely to get our grant if we're modifying it along the way?
It's a good question. I guess I want to put a little more thought into it, but my recommendation right now would be that if you submitted on a new building and then you decided that you wanted to renovate instead, I would suggest a meeting with the state to see if you can change your grant application before it's listed on the December 15th priority list. That would be my recommendation, to try to catch it before it goes through the state legislative process. I can't answer if that's happened in the past. I know projects have changed type in the past, but it's typically been the opposite, where you think you're going to renovate a building and you run into issues these days with PCBs are a big issue, and sometimes when they leach into adjacent materials, it becomes a greater issue. So I've seen where people think they're going to renovate and they get costs to remediate and decide, wow, it's cheaper to build new. So I haven't seen it the opposite, but there's always a first. So.
And then along those same lines, if we delayed a year and decided that we wanted to do work on another building and submit 2 grants, do you get a more favorable rate if you're submitting more than 1 grant? Do they seem to impact each other?
You don't, unfortunately, get a more favorable rate, although that would be nice. They're essentially treated independently. And for completeness on the grant application, so I don't think there's any favoritism either way. I think they're looking at, is it complete and stands on its merits for that particular grant application. So if you did 2, plenty of communities do. As long as they're complete, I think you would expect them to show up on the next year's priority list. Thank you.
Let me jump back in with a question then. So we're talking a little bit about this hypothetical shift away from build as new to renovate or not, things like that. There's a lot of decisions that we have to make, and these are still very much ifs. The biggest one being, does the town want to do this? But the question of just those two comparison points, renovate as new versus build new, at least from everything that you've shown so far, it seems as though, especially the slide you were referencing in the more condensed version, which is I think slide 18, the delta and resultant value, you do this all the time. So to me, this looks like the Venn diagram of why build is new is much, much better, is pretty compelling. It's much less time, much better end product, and also a lower real delta. So my question to you is this typical? Meaning, like, for most of the places you work, is it always kind of better to tear it down and build something new? Or are we just in this one question, build new versus renovate? Are we at least with that one decision, in a pretty choice position because we are looking at a chance to build a whole new facility for, based on your that slide, actually better overall value?
So that value analysis slide wasn't really intended to swing a community in one direction or another. It was rooted in the conversation of what do you end up with for your building. Like, so and I think our job is to, if you're spending this amount of money on a building, what am I actually investing in the building that's going to stay there? That's what that analysis is for, versus spending it on trailers that are going to be there for 3 or 4 years versus all the people that are going to be there. So that is why we did that analysis. It does marry the two closer together, which that is intentional to make sure that there's a hard conversation there about new versus renovate as new. We had, and I spoke to this, I think at the last week's meeting. There's another slide that has it's the kind of the stoplight slide. There was an awful lot of conversation leading up to the decision of renovate as new to new from the working group's perspective, from the educational perspective as well, and a significant one, and understandably, a significant one is. I don't know if we can work on pulling that up. Thank you so much. Duration disruption, right? The renovate as new is typically twice as long, and I won't go over all these, but because I think many of you heard what I said last week. But the biggest ones that stick out are duration disruption, because how do you put a value to it? It's going to be twice as long. You can have any expert in here. It's going to take you longer to renovate. It's even more difficult these days because of lead times with issues. So we're doing new buildings, and we're also doing renovate as new buildings. They both have their complications. New is more predictable. Renovate as new is not. Disruption is a big key. And then the core facilities are things like your CAFs, your gyms, your media centers are key pieces. So where we've seen it work really well is, I'll give you an example, Colchester Middle School. We did that project. It was a building that was almost two and a half times bigger than it needed to be. So we put all the students in one side of the building, cut a slice through the building, built a new portion, two-story new portion in the middle. Moved the students in, renovated the rest, connected it, and it ended up being a much more efficient plan. That works well because if we can move everybody out of this building and renovate it, then you could essentially renovate it in the same time as a new building. But those options are very few and far between. So that wasn't an option available to us when we were looking at that analysis. So that's why we think, when you compare new versus renovate as new, there's some areas like duration disruption that you can't put a number to that I think outweigh those, certainly when it comes to an educational impact perspective. So I know, for and against, I can't put actual numbers to that top line, but this summarizes many conversations we had related to renovate as new versus new. That was probably too long-winded.
No, thank you.
More questions? Is Peter on the line still? Does he? Peter, you have any questions or comments?
Yes, I'm still here. Again, first and foremost, I took copious notes from public comments. Significant insights there. And I'm humble enough to know when people say really intelligent things, right, you have to have really good considerations. And again, good questions tonight. I have two comments. One isn't meant to be me, but I do want to debunk right. Whether you rip the handle off the building as renovation, that would get a capital budget, so you renovate it new, or you build a new building, you're going to have things to haul away. So maybe a degree of how much, but you still have how much. So I think it's actually a red herring to say that a building is new undermines green school and healthy building philosophy. But that's just a minor detail. More importantly, I wanted to address a common theme up there in public comment is that we actually do have a encompassing vision for the 39 acres of the schools. And I'm assuming you can hear me, right, Steve?
Yes.
Excellent. And a lot of thought went into this because I think Sharon did a good job. She said we went sort of from a atomistic FOC study to focus on a building, but it really isn't atomistic, it's really holistic. So there's actually a vision for the holistic campus that really ratchets up the value of education in the Western public schools, right? Both what gets taught in the schools, between the schools as an envelope. And I'll give an example just so the public can understand an element of this vision. And let's say we build a new school. Let's say we have parts of an acre to an acre and a half of now open greenfield land next to the new middle school. That vision moves the bus depot from Route 53 to electric charging stations that will be mandated 5 years from now next to the middle school. So what have we done? We've actually opened up new opportunities for learning by our students. And the new opportunity that could become available to us. Now we have a plot of land with a sidewalk across from Little Leagues, right? Next to the Pearl Bud. So either it becomes something useful to Pearl Bud, or it can become a vocational center, right? Because we have a shed, we have a parking lot, it's secure. So I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying that if we expand our minds a little bit and we look at it as a holistic vision, we see that we leverage every acre of the campus more than probably any of our competitive districts. So moving forward, when you do this, you now have phenomenal value generated from every acre, and you add new opportunities because you move the pieces around intelligently. So I just wanted to add it to the public that these things are under consideration. These things have been accounted for, and I have a sort of a thought piece out. Certainly can be available to anyone. And of course, mark it up really sharply, right? I mean, that's why we have public comment and public input. I mean, the more insight we get from the public, people have been here 30 years and gone through what they've gone through, or people have been here 2 years and have seen a little bit and want more. That's part of the process, right? So I just wanted to end on that note after listening intently here, that there's more to the picture than simply tonight's vote. It's a holistic leveraging and creation of value. And value translates to the educational trajectory that the superintendent has described and Tecton has described. So I just wanted to end on that note. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Peter. Other questions, comments from the board? So, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So I have questions that are more for the board. So Jeff, these are not directed towards you, but certainly feel free to weigh in. So I just wanted to first give a little bit of quick background. At the second to last, for the board members as you're asked to vote tonight, at the second to last FOC meeting on April 27th, I was quoted as saying, "We're missing the financial appetite from the community, and we should poll the community to get feedback." I'm also going to quote Rick Bertese from the FOC, who said, "We need to get the budget implications from the Board of Finance." That was over 2 years ago, and neither has been done. At the final FOC meeting on May 18th, a vote was taken on forwarding only 2 of the many design options created by Tecton and reviewed by the FOC. All of the options should have been forwarded. At the vote, Steve Ezzies voted no for sending just 2 options for consideration. Roan Baldwin voted no to only send 2 options. I voted no to only send 2 options. And the only other member of the FOC currently serving in the capacity of BOE, BOF, or BOS today is Tony Pesco, who did not vote. So why is it 2 years ago we voted to have multiple options considered, and here we are tonight being told there's just one? I guess it's more of a comment than a question. Related, we're all members of the community, and we can speak to the dog park, pickleball courts, and sidewalks, and there is relevance here. How is this relevant? Because all of these initiatives have a common theme. Those opposed to them felt the initiatives were not fully vetted before being asked to vote for or against. My next point. How many of us were on the BOE when WIS was being considered? I don't think. Right, well, I'm on the active BOE today. None. All right, and there's relevance here. So I spoke with someone who has firsthand knowledge. Sorry, it was not you, or I'm not going to be quoting you. But I spoke to someone who has firsthand knowledge, and here's what the person said. In 2002 or 2003, the town focused solely on the construction of a new school. In late 2008, early 2009, we had the financial crisis. Homes that had been subject to reevaluation tanked, and as a result, preventative maintenance to Hurlbut, Weston Middle School, and the high school has suffered. We're on that same trajectory. And my next point, this is more a question for the board. So we were given the educational specifications document a week ago. It's 378 pages. Who can tell me, honestly, of the 7 members?
248? I can't.
Right. No, I mean, this is a legit question. 387 pages. We got it a week ago. Who on this board has actually read all 387 pages? But that is a critical component to what we have to vote on tonight. It's called out. As Jeff said, the ed specifications is the most important piece of approval by the Board of Ed for a state grant. And none of us, in good faith, can say we read the entire document. And the last piece is Roan Baldwin, a long-standing member of the Board of Finance, asked 2 questions in his official capacity as the Vice Chair of the Board of Finance. Question 1, what are the financial implications for the town of Weston? And 2, do we have sufficient support from the voters of Weston that we should submit this proposal to the state for a matching grant? He urged us not to submit any proposal for a matching grant from the state of Connecticut. I urge the Board of Selectmen not to approve scheduling an official referendum to approve any such proposal until the town of Weston has answered the basic question around financial implications and taxpayers' support. So I will just simply say, as a Board of Ed member, I cannot vote yes in good faith tonight. I'm going to ask the rest of my board members also to vote no.
You didn't put that on the official. That was as a citizen. You can't do that as a BOF member.
I can have a conversation with him. We can caucus.
The email that he sent to all the board members was not a BOF member. It was a citizen. It came from his private email.
It doesn't change the.
No,
it doesn't change his opinion and the facts.
Other questions, comments from the board?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in. So, yeah, I know. Sorry you asked, right? So, David, I will direct this to some of what you said, but I throw it out there in the spirit of trying to wrestle with what you just shared, I think it's important to clarify that we have seen options. It's not the option, part of why we've engaged expert consultants. Again, not that you all have been great. I'm not trying to diss you in any way, okay? But not that we're saying Tecton is the consultant that if we choose to do something we would use. But part of the reason why we've engaged expert consultants is to give us a menu of sorts of different options. They've done that. And via those options, the build is new is the recommendation we're considering for this one school, based on a whole bunch of compelling reasons about the disruption, about the total cost, about the length of time, et cetera, et cetera. So we have seen some options. And the question about the town financial appetite, I agree. The question will eventually be, does the town want to do this or not? Absolutely. But the way you make a decision this big is not to say we have, use it round dollar as an example, right? We have 47 cents that we want to spend. We don't want to spend any money. Nobody wants to spend any money. We'd ideally rather have a school that worked flawlessly, perfectly, and didn't have to put any capital investments into it. What we need to do is paint a compelling picture of what our 21st century education looks like for our students. We need to paint the best picture of what the 4 schools look like, how the entire campus works, and then how do we achieve that vision as affordably and as responsibly as possible? Now, I'm not saying necessarily yet that what we're looking at is the most affordable, most responsible version of that. But we have to create a compelling vision of what we want our students to, how we want them to spend their however many hours we talked about it being in school, 18,000 hours or something insane like that we were talking about in the last meetings. So I urge us to think not just about what is the financial appetite, but what's the vision of what we want to create. And keep in mind that we're talking about the decision is not to go down this track, definitely. The decision is, do we submit a grant proposal for this version that Tecton is suggesting is a pretty compelling one for Build is New.
Let me just clarify. I'm not opposed to moving this forward. I believe we should, but not tonight. It is premature. We don't have all the information we need.
Okay, Jeff, one more question. In your experience, have you ever had a community that put forward a grant request and the referendum failed? And then they perhaps worked on building consensus and applied again the following year? Does that do anything to our chances of getting a grant request fulfilled the following year, if something like that were to happen here?
It's a good question. First, I'll stay with my example of Colchester. So it failed the first referendum. The first referendum that we put forward at the time was a combination of a middle school. So we were trying to optimize the footprint of the existing school, which was much larger than it needed to be. So we were trying to, we combined a community center, a senior center, and a middle school. That was a difficult concept for the community to wrap their head around, certainly in the day and age of safety, security, those kinds of things. So it failed the first round. It wasn't really because of money, it was because of everybody saw the need. It was because of that concept. And then we came back the following year with a middle school only, and it passed overwhelmingly. That grant app, I cannot remember specifically. We were preparing the grant application, but I don't think we submitted it that first year. To answer your question in short, if you submit it and then it fails, it's happened before, many times before. And you just you submit it the next year. If it changes, you change the grant application. So projects have failed, and grant applications have gone nowhere after they've failed.
And if we were to resubmit a second year, would the fact that we weren't able to get consensus in the initial referendum be held against us as far as our reimbursement is concerned?
I haven't seen it. Again, it's pretty transparent there. The rates are published, so what you see is what you get, as long as you submit a complete grant application. So I haven't seen it myself. So
I'm a little confused by that because you said that it can go from, what was it, like 10 or 11% up to 21%.
Sure.
What is it that gives it,
So
it's set?
Yeah, it's the type of grant application. So new construction is
Right.
typically the lower one. It will change. The percentage will change from 2024 to 2025. They haven't. I don't think they've published the 2025 reimbursement rate yet. So, I guess in short, I don't think they would look at it negatively. If you failed the first time.
Jeff, just really a quick follow-up question. Is there any deferral? Like, let's say you were awarded a grant. Is there an ability to defer that at all into the future? Let's say if, of course, we were going through the machinations here of building consensus and trying to figure out exactly how we were going to move forward, whether or not we're going to modify, et cetera. Is there an ability to defer that?
So you have 2 years to put a shovel in the ground once you receive the approval letter.
Okay.
I believe. I'll check that. I don't think they've changed that. So that's your time frame, really?
I'll just say I think I'll throw in my 2 cents since everyone else has. Look, you're not going to find someone who's more pro-education than me. Changed my life, frankly. And I have 2 small children in the school system here. Right? And so I want what's best for them, and I think as we all do. And we're all trying to find a balancing act between, what's best for them and, of course, doing it in a fiscally prudent way. As I read through everything and I watched the meeting from last week, I was unable to attend, unfortunately, but, I thought about how I would undergo the process if I were in business, right? If I were working for my company, and I came to the CFO and I said, okay, and the board said, okay, this is what we're thinking of. And I just jotted down a few notes, and I'll be quick. But the first step, of course, is I would have the BOE work on developing a full set of proposals for the Weston Middle School. Everything from new construction to just upgrading systems. I would then work with the town to identify all capital improvements that would require bonding, including anticipated upgrades to the other 3 schools, as well as, again, the town projects. This is not a decision in isolation. Third step I would do is I would work with the Board of Finance to understand the implications of each scenario. Then I would present, as step 4, present those scenarios to the public and hold a referendum, probably a town hall referendum, and ensure that we have alignment, and then we can make a decision, I think, with input from all stakeholders, and move the proposal forward, including the grant application. So what I don't want this to come across as from any of us, because we're all here trying to do what's best for the kids and the town, of course. I don't want this to turn into a pro or anti-education discussion. But I do think that we do need more time and probably more information on this. And so just to take a more thoughtful approach. So that's, I think, just my commentary. I feel as though the process may be, I don't know, to me, and again, I'm new on the board, but feels like the process may be a bit backwards for me. So I think we could probably, engage in a more thoughtful approach if maybe we had more information and communicated it to the public. So.
Other questions, comments? So the next item is a discussion, which you just had, and a vote to move the Weston School project forward. There are three separate motions. I can read the first. Be it resolved that the Weston Board of Education recommends that the Weston Board of Finance recommend that the Weston Board of Selectmen prepare and establish a date for referendum for the authorization of an appropriation, an amount not to exceed $111,873,907 for the school building project for the construction of a new Weston Middle School building, and that the town finance said appropriation by issuing bonds, notes, in an amount not to exceed $111,873,907, or so much as may be necessary after deducting grants therefore. That's the first. The second, be it further resolved that the Weston Board of Education anticipates applying for a school building project grant from the State of Connecticut Commissioner of Administrative Services to receive a state grant for the project to be used to pay for the cost of the project if such application is authorized by the Weston Board of Selectmen. And the third is, be it further resolved that the Weston Board of Education hereby approves the educational specifications for the new Weston Middle School project. So, taking those in order, the first motion is for the Weston Board of Education recommending to the Weston Board of Finance that the Weston Board of Finance recommend that the Weston Board of Selectmen prepare and establish a date for the referendum for the authorization or appropriation in the amount not to exceed $111,873,907 for the school building project for the construction of a new Weston Middle School building, and that the town finance said appropriation by issuing bonds or notes in an amount not to exceed $111,873,907, or so much as may be necessary after deducting grants therefore. Do I have a motion to approve? Motion that we recommend that the Weston Board of Finance recommend that the Weston Board of Selectmen prepare and establish a date for a referendum under the terms that I just, or we can do this in a different order if you like. We can vote on the grant application. The grant application, which, sorry?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes. Do you have something to say?
I was going to say, did we want to break this into several votes? Steve, is that your intent here? Because I lost track for a second as I was reading.
Well, I believe we're supposed to, I believe, Lisa, you tell me.
Yes,
if I'm
we're
wrong.
supposed to, you are supposed to vote on each motion. Whatever order you want to do it in is fine, but each motion needs a vote. That's
So-
per our internal counsel.
Right. So it would seem that the appropriate motion is, or the appropriate motion to be considered is, be it further resolved that the Weston Board of Education anticipates applying for a school building project grant from the State of Connecticut Commissioner of Administrative Services to receive a state grant for the project to be used to pay the cost of the project if such application is authorized by the Weston Board of Selectmen. If we choose to move that forward, the others then follow. Just
What is the grant application, referendum date, request for the Board of Selectmen, what's the third?
ed specs. So,
And the ed specs were put together with the EOC, correct? And the administration?
Correct.
Okay.
But the ed specs were just provided last Tuesday. The EOC hasn't met since.
If I may, as Jeff said, the ed specs are a blueprint to move the project forward. Basically, it's ed specs for a new school.
That's the ed specs.
So, not to read it for a fifth time or fourth time, I've lost count. The motion that we're being asked to opine on is whether we are going to progress applying for a school building grant. That's what I just read. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor? Let's go around the room. Chad?
This is to move forward with submitting a
Move forward
grant.
with the grant.
Yes. Aye.
Michael?
No.
Sharon?
Yes.
David?
No.
Bernadette?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Peter?
I'm a yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Motion is approved. The second is the much longer one, which is, be it resolved that the Weston Board of Education recommends that the Weston Board of Finance recommend that the Weston Board of Selectmen prepare and establish a date for a referendum for the authorization of an appropriation in the amount not to exceed $111,873,907 for the school building project for the construction of a new Weston Middle School building, and that the town finance said appropriation by issuing bonds or notes in an amount not to exceed $111,873,907 or so much as may be necessary after deducting grants therefore. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Chad?
Aye.
Michael?
No.
Sharon?
Aye.
David?
No.
Bernadette?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Peter?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion's approved. Lastly, be it further resolved that the Weston Board of Education hereby approves the educational specifications for the new Weston Middle School project. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second again.
Okay. Chad?
Aye.
Michael?
No.
Sharon?
Aye.
David?
No.
Bernadette?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion is approved. So, just so everyone knows, the next meeting on this topic will take place on June 3rd, where Tecton will be making a presentation to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, and the Board of Education is invited to that meeting as well. Okay.
Can I ask if we just take a quick 5-minute bio break?
No.
Okay.
No,
Then I'll just do it.
Of course.
I wasn't sure that, Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yeah, go ahead. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Okay. We start moving this forward. We're just missing David and Sharon. Oh, no, there's Sharon right there, so now we're just missing David.
Okay,
No,
next.
David's there too. Okay, so
Okay, next on the agenda is one of my favorite parts of the agenda, and that is recognition. Just a couple words on that. We've really tried to make sure that we get all the recognition, the philanthropies, the grants in every year, because our community is so generous, so many organizations in supporting us. So if it's okay, I would like to move forward with each recognition item, Mr. Aziz.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first is the approval, and this is a big one. Wait 1 minute. It's an approval for $102,000 to approve the Hurlburt Elementary School PTO donation. And I'd like to read something. I am excited, this is actually, Kelly James was very excited, and I'm excited to receive a philanthropy gift for approval on behalf of the Hurlburt PTO for up to $105,000 for the North House Playground. The playground improvements will include 2 new playscapes, replacing the wooden structures that are at the end of their life. The playground improvements will be installed this summer and will not only enhance the physical well-being of our children, but also serve as a hub for fostering creativity, collaboration, and friendship. The Hurlburt PTO is contributing $70,000 from their philanthropy account from the proceeds of the previous 2 Memorial Day fairs and using their unused funds during COVID. They have hosted 3 successful fundraising campaigns, including the School Experiences Auction, the B-Ball Auction, and the Brick Campaign, which will go to the end of the year. Together, this enables the Hurlburt PTO to make this really generous donation of $105,000 up to, as part of their commitment to enrich the educational experience. And I know that Ms. Cadis, shout out to Ms. Cadis, who is a big supporter of the PTO and has attended all of the fundraising and supports this grant, or this donation rather. So I would ask that you approve it, please.
So do we have a recommendation? If someone would like to make the motion, all right.
We have the motion language
Go
for
ahead,
this
Dan.
one. Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the Hess PTO donation in the amount of $102,000 to replace the Hurlburt North House Playground.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can I say something?
No, that ship sailed.
Ladies, I would like to ask you to do some fundraising for a new building maybe, or something.
Sharon asked for a certain kind of brownies.
The next approval is an approval. Yay. The next, boy, it's getting rowdy here. The next approval is for a Sustainable Connecticut grant in the amount of $4,000 in support of the WHS Pollinator Courtyard. For full disclosure, we've spent a lot of the money already, but we do need you to approve it. And if you look on my Instagram, you will see that garden is absolutely gorgeous. Poor Megan Canetta is under the weather. That's why she's not here tonight, and we encouraged her to stay home and not spread anything to anyone else at the back table, because we certainly need our principals at the schools. So I would ask you to please approve this $4,000, and you need to see this garden or check out my Instagram. Absolutely stunning, stunning inner courtyard garden, and it's a pollinator garden.
David?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the Sustainable Connecticut Inc. grant in the amount of $4,000 in support of the Weston High School Pollinator.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Oh, I forgot.
The next is an acceptance, but we do want to mention it, from the WHS PTO, who has donated $1,500 for, it says, flexible seating in a Spanish classroom. Let me explain. We are piloting different types of furniture at the high school, at the different schools, quite frankly, but the high school is one that we were particularly looking in, and we were looking, the PTO asked teachers, if you're interested in something, please come to us with a grant, and that is one of the donations. So the idea is to kind of test it out and see how it goes, how the kids like it and everything else before, we don't want to invest in money in furniture if we don't have the successful experience by the students in the class. So that's the idea there, and we greatly appreciate the PTO. So thank you for accepting that. I don't think there's a motion.
Okay.
No, there is.
Acceptance? Okay, go ahead, sorry. Oh, sorry.
Move that the Weston Board of Education accept the WHS PTO donation in the amount of $1,500 for flexible seating and a Spanish classroom.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next is the acceptance of a WHS PTO donation in the amount of $1,194.13. As former principal, I'm really excited about this donation because it talks about things like tablecloths, different things that we put out to make things look nice. And you might say tablecloths. I can attest the tablecloths have the old seal on it from 20 years ago. We really needed this upgrade. So I would ask that you pass the motion to accept that.
Move that the Weston Board of Education accept the WHS PTO donation in the amount of $1,194.13 to purchase reception special event materials for WHS.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Continuing along the pollinator theme, the WHS PTO also donated $1,200 to this project, so I would ask you to kindly accept it.
Go ahead, David.
Move that the Weston Board of Education accept the WHS PTO donation in the amount of $1,200 to help fund the Courtyard Pollinator Native Garden Project as part of the Sustainable Solutions course.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 The next is actually an approval of a $6,000 award, and this is really exciting. The Connecticut DMV Travelers Insurance has a video contest for safe driving, and the students that won that other award that was so amazing that some of you went to a C-SPAN, they've done it again, and this $6,000 is, if you can see in the copy, it's a donation to the program, to the high school. So we are really very excited about that because it goes right to the videography program. And if you haven't seen the commercial, I will send it to you if you haven't seen the link. Very powerful commercial.
I'd love to see that.
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
I meant to send it out and I got a little sidetracked with some other things, but I have it, very powerful. Could you please approve it?
David?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the $6,000 award given by the Connecticut DMV Travelers Insurance for the first place in their annual video contest.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the last is an acknowledgement. Again, this is another organization that has been donating to us for years, but we really need to publicly recognize that the county assemblies, the county assemblies give a $500 donation annually to Weston High School from the proceeds of this dance, and that those funds are used at the discretion of the principal, and it's greatly appreciated.
David?
No motion.
Oh, no motion.
I think it's just an acknowledgement. And we're done with that and can move on to policies, regulations, and bylaws. We have several first reads. I would ask, Sharon, would you like to take it from here?
Sure. Let's see. So we have, oh my goodness, yeah, we've got admission and placement policy. Did everyone have an opportunity to take a look at that? And that one, I'm trying to think of specifics on this because this was a while ago that we discussed this one. This had to do with when children come into the district where they are placed as far as their grade is concerned. And Was this one, was this a renewal?
This is the first read. I believe
Or
it
an
relates
update?
to admission. Dr. Henkel, you worked
Yeah.
on this collaboratively with Ms. Edwards, correct?
Was this an update to an existing policy? I'm trying to remember. Okay, Jody's giving us a yes. Thanks.
Yeah, yes, it wasn't an update to an existing policy since we have updated on kindergarten entry.
Right.
Based on the new law for age requirements.
Correct. All right, so first read, anybody have any questions on this one in particular?
Yeah, I do. Can you clarify why we're striking out or what the intent was of the future resident, lease of residence?
Let's see.
Can you, I'm sorry, can you, the B?
Yeah, and only because I remember seeing a couple of emails as a board of ed member where there was some residency questions. It seems like this would have, is that right? Oh, okay. All right. So in that case, my question still stands, so why are we getting, what is the spirit of B that we're getting rid of it?
I believe, and correct me if, or add some further light onto this, Dr. Henkel, I believe, or Mr. Guido, who sits on that policy committee as well, I believe that those particular things about lease and future residents is incorporated into the residency policy.
Some of that content language is displaced until we reorganize it as well.
Okay.
Other aspects of policy that it's more appropriate.
Because there are also some more clarifications about residency that we get into, that this was kind of a cursory reference, if you will, and the residency policy has a lot more specifics about that, about if something happens, somebody has to move out, renovate a house, all of that. And so it kind of, as you said, it belongs there. So that's why it was removed.
Okay, so any other questions on that policy?
It will come back next month.
Yeah, we're going to have a second read next month, and then we'll vote on it. Again, all these are first reads. So the next one is a discussion regarding artificial intelligence. And this is a first, this was the first time that we've done this one in particular. Dan, you worked on this as well with us, I believe. Ooh, and any questions on this policy? Has everyone had a chance to look at it?
I have one question and then one offer, which is, the question is simply like, I'm just glancing through this. I think the last paragraph is probably the most important. The only certainty that exists in the area of AI technology is it will continuously evolve. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
So the two things are, I would encourage us to take generative AI and all its implications and fold that into all the same deep thinking we're trying to do about tech in general, meaning how we adopt it, when we adopt it, when it's duplicative and actually reductive, or when it multiplies. So that's the first thing. But the second is, Dan, maybe you and I can connect offline if you want, but there's whole organizations now who their entire mission is trying to figure out a way to put guardrails in place and educational stuff. Maybe you've already accessed that, but if I'll throw a few things your way if useful to use as resources, because it's like Wild West out there right now. So I think more cooks probably the better. But
That would actually be great. We're actually working with CABE too for this, I believe, correct? Yep. This was a CABE policy that we took and made our own.
Yep.
Peter, I think your volume is still on.
Peter, we can hear background noise. Just to give you an FYI. Chad, thank you very much. This is the dominating all conversations in the ed tech space, and there was a conference run by the Connecticut Education Network 2 weeks ago, and that was AI was about 80% of all the sessions. Yeah. So it's the Wild West. We're all trying to bring it together and work through it together and make sure that we have guardrails in place while we're embracing it and making sure it's enhancing the classroom. But like you said, with guardrails on. So I'll take any information because, I mean, I'm basically I read so much in AI, my eyes cross over time, and I have to keep going. But
the reason I thought of it is because I actually was at a conference recently with one of the directors from Humane Tech, and that's their whole specialty is this. So anyway, for a different time. We don't have to spend time on it now, but.
Opportunity, though, to add, as you'll see, generative AI is defined by our policy, is woven into current instructional policies around student privacy, around academic honesty, equipment, books, and materials that we just updated a month or so ago, as well as appropriate use and ethical use of tools. So we want to make sure that while we hear the Wild West out there, the reflection and purpose of why we make decisions is directly connected to ethical use in schools, not only for students, but for staff as well. And that's what this first read and first design of our policy includes. And as with all policies, we hope to put it into place. We have an AI advisory committee that we've established to help us design this with CABE's support. And we'd like to move this forward at least for a year and see how it works. And then we're going to gather feedback and obviously make some revisions as we grow and learn more about it.
And that's why it was really important that when we looked at what CABE had put out as an option, and we decided to break it out further and specify AI for student use and AI for teacher use, because they're very separate scenarios. So we're trying to really hone in and get as detailed as we possibly can.
One suggestion I have is that you reference policies. We need to list what those policies are and the title of those policies, because I do think that also serves as some of the guardrails. You know, if you notice at the end, we just need to list, I think.
It's on the first page.
It's on the first page? Okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if we needed to add it to the regulations too, just to make sure that everybody knows what that is.
One quick question. Compared to a lot of documents I look at for first read, there's a lot of lineouts that you all have. Is there anything you want us to understand when we're looking at this as to what we should be adding or subtracting, or why all the lineouts?
Did you prep him? No, kidding. So as we discussed, this was a model policy from CABE. It's their first iteration of what they propose for schools to use as a reflection tool.
I see.
You'll notice that the language is not written in policy language. It's more about districts and their teams to think about as they are designing it. So that's why you'll see all the strikeouts.
Gotcha. Okay, just a fun anecdote just for all of us to wrestle with. So this was at a AI conference I attended. Some teacher put in place that they could only submit papers that were handwritten. That's what she told her students. So some kid built a 3D printer and plugged it into ChatGPT and fed prompts to ChatGPT, which then was channeled through a 3D printer to write the essay in handwriting style. So I actually think kind of high points for inventiveness.
I think so too. He gets an A for that one.
Just pointing out that there's more to come on this topic.
We kind of foresee in the policy committee that this will probably be the most updated policy that we have.
You think it's going to last the 20 years that we?
I don't think it's going to be sunset. Let's put it that way. All right. So that is our first read. Any other questions on this one?
I'm just glad to see the other side of it, which is that it applies to personnel as well. I feel a lot of our policies kind of similarly focus on students. So I was glad to see that we're also applying AI policies to personnel.
Okay. Thank you.
One last comment there, Tina, just really quickly. How often would you expect we'd get updates from the advisory committee on what's going on, policies, what their findings, implementation, et cetera?
While we don't have a schedule, I think most of our advisory committees meet at least 3 times a year. That's our goal. So after we do that, we can definitely have a summary and let you know what some of those conversations sounded like.
Great.
All right, on to the next one. This one is educational tours, and you can tell this is a modern policy because it's a picture of a piece of paper that was typed out. In March 5th, 1991. So we are sunsetting this because the information has pretty much been rolled into other policies that we have on the books right now. So it's no longer necessary. So we are proposing that we sunset that one. Any questions? All right, the next two are also, we're proposing that we sunset, and again, it's the same thing. The information was basically rolled into other policies or no longer necessary. So I thought that this was pretty interesting, the 5141.2. the student illness. Some of the illnesses were kind of interesting. I mean, German measles, mumps, chickenpox, and they're talking about blisters until blisters are well crusted, approximately 1 week. So since none of our kids are pretty much getting chickenpox anymore because this was pre-vaccine, it's pretty interesting. So this was written in 1990, and it's time to go to bed. So we're going to sunset that one. Any questions? And then the last one is 5141.22, and again, same thing, students afflicted with communicable diseases, of which we have now moved any necessary language into existing policies and another policy, and then we're getting rid of this one. This one was clearly a child of the 80s. So, any other questions on this? All right. I think that's it for the, right? For policy?
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the next subject is personnel matter, and this is a discussion and vote regarding the 2024-25 compensation for the following positions: executive assistant to the superintendent, administrative assistant to the assistant superintendent, administrative assistant to the human resources director, administrative assistant to the people services director, finance and facilities office manager, accounting manager, payroll and benefits coordinator, accounts payable and accounts receivable coordinator, district data coordinator, information technology manager, data analyst, athletic trainer, vocational specialist, district nurse supervisor, and food services director. Are there questions on this? David, you want to read the motion?
It's a mouthful. Move that the Weston Board of Education approve a 2.5% general wage increase for the 24-25 school year for the following positions: executive assistant to the superintendent, administrative assistant to the assistant superintendent, administrative assistant to the human resources director, administrative assistant to the pupil services director, finance and facilities office manager, accounting manager, payroll and benefits coordinator, accounts payable and accounts receivable coordinator, district data coordinator, information technology manager, data analyst, athletic trainer, vocational specialist, district nurse supervisor, food services director.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor? Aye. The next is a discussion and vote on an overnight trip to Disney in February 2025.
Thank you. We had a presentation by Liz Morris, our curriculum and instruction leader, during our Board of Ed Curriculum Committee. This is a request for approval for an overnight field trip during the month, it's a long weekend in February in 2025, offered to 150 students in our performing arts program at the high school, where they will be going to Disney's Imagination Campus in Walt Disney World. They will engage in a series of educational experiences ranging from soundtrack sessions as a recording artist. They will also be performing in the amphitheater for a live performance and concert, and they will be also engaging in in-park performing arts exposure. The time frame of the trip is Thursday, the 20. Sorry, I don't know if you need to know the dates. They're in here. Thank you. The 27th through March the 3rd. It is. They're leaving Thursday afternoon after school and returning on a Monday.
Exciting. David?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the overnight field trip to Disney in February 2025.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Would I be a Scrooge if I said no? No, I'm joking. Aye. How do you not let a kid go to Disney?
Lisa? Just
Consent agenda, Dr. Rasmussen.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just kind of, this is like the consent agenda that really goes with a lot of all exits. We have a number of retirements and also resignations. Just a few one comment on the retirements. We are the 5 professionals that are listed there account for about 96 years of experience that we have leaving our district, from many in the 20-some year experience range. So we thank them for their service and also the resignations that are for people moving on to different opportunities.
I'd also like to take this opportunity. One of the resignations is Dr. Rasmussen, our Director of Human Resources. And I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you, Paul, for your work this year. Things that will continue on that Dr. Rasmussen created was the new Teacher Academy and our DEI plan for hiring. If you recall, it was presented a few meetings ago. You may recall or you may not know that Dr. Rasmussen has a doctorate in educational leadership. And that's really his passion, the idea of teaching and learning, the power of assessment and analysis of assessment. And we certainly support his return to that passion and wish him well.
Thank you.
Move that the Weston Board of Education accept the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Lisa?
Aye.
Superintendent report. We've been working diligently. We're in the home stretch. I encourage you to listen to my podcasts, my next 2 upcoming podcasts. I always put a plug in for that. And to please go support the Memorial Day Fair and the Memorial Day Road Race. It supports our PTOs. It's a wonderful weekend. And I am going to defer my time to the pupil personnel services and special education. Ms. Edwards.
Good evening, everybody. I have a very quick update for tonight. Our final parent meeting of the year is this Wednesday, May 22nd at 8:30 in the morning. The meeting will be held virtually. The topics we're highlighting this month are extended school year, and we're also talking about inclusive practices in the district based on some questions from families. In terms of other things going on in PPS, we're planning for ESY 2024. That's in full swing, and have also started the hiring process for the 24-25 school year. I'll just say so far for the positions that we have open, we've been really impressed by the breadth and depth of the applicant pool, which is a nice return, I think, to pre-COVID times. So more updates to come in future meetings, but that's all I have for tonight.
Phil?
Good evening, everyone. No, it's late. I'll try to be as efficient as possible. I have a few things on the agenda for tonight. First item up is a finance and operations report. Really, the last time we met back in February, so since then, the change is approximately $314,000. The big takeaway that we have here is what we discussed at the last meeting, $230,000 that we were holding for capital projects have been released. The Board of Finance has recommended that we do these projects via a special appropriation. We did start the first process with the Board of Selectmen last Thursday, I believe. So the next step is the Board of Finance for the final approval. We've had some other salary movements, benefits adjustment. So between now and the end of the year, there will be a lot of pluses and minuses. Will ultimately, the final end of year number being reported sometime in August or early September, either late August or September. So based on those changes, we're at a current surplus of $534,219.
A motion to approve the financial update?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the April 2024 financial update as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next item up is approval of out-of-district transportation. We issued an RFP for out-of-district transportation. We had 3 companies responded. We are recommending that we award the contracts or the routes to the vendors based on the lowest price, with the exception of Route 5, which is pretty much based on student need. And at this point, because of the need of the student and the trend that's involved, we are recommending that we keep this route with the current vendor unless the vendor let us know otherwise that they're not able to provide this route or any other routes, then we'll have to move it to the next lowest provider.
You read my mind. You knew the exact question I would ask.
We've had some practice.
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the transportation recommendation as presented.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next item up is results from our cleaning RFP. Try to be efficient with this one also. We are recommended at this time that we remain with our current provider. Of all the vendors, just some backstory, we think we had 11 or so people showed up at our mandatory walkthrough. Of that number, six vendors responded. Prices range from a low of $867,000 to $1,095,000. Again, as you will see, the number of employees provided by the vendors, they vary. Based on our experience and what we know that it will take to get the building cleaned in an efficient manner or in a way that's acceptable to us, we know that, let's call it the sweet spot, is between 29 to the mid-30s in number of employees. So based on that, we've pretty much eliminated a few companies. We've eliminated the first vendor. And we have also, while the higher bidders, they're providing us with more employees, they're also costing significantly more. The next vendor that was on the low end as well came in at $3.2 million. They're also providing us with 22 employees, which is below the threshold or the optimum level that we believe would be effective in cleaning our buildings. So we're left with two vendors, Affinica, our current provider, and Shamrock. So our current provider is providing us with 32 employees. Sorry if I'm going too fast. And Shamrock is providing us with 27 for a slightly higher cost. So based on all those factors, we are recommending that we maintain with our current provider. We've made leaps and bounds over the past 5 years, and while we're still growing and making changes, we do believe that this is the best recommendation at this time.
Questions?
Let me jump on one quick point, which is I just thought of this as you're going through basically vendor relationships with a school. So Lisa, Tina, and Phil, I guess, one of the interesting things that Peter has been sort of excavating in this whole process with the EOC is how often you can find overlap with savings and sustainability. And given how much focus this district is trying to put on sustainability, that maybe one filter you want to put on some of these vendors is, do they have sort of like a sustainability focus? I'm guessing always price is going to be the thing we have to keep in mind, but just throwing it out there, especially when we're thinking about that there was, PBAs or whatever it is in the wells for a while, that we remediated that and fixed that. Might be an interesting lens to think about when we look at vendors.
Sure. So a lot of the products that these vendors do use, they're kind of mandated by the state in terms of green products and stuff like that. So we do try to ensure that as we look at the specs and the cut sheets, that they're maintaining that kind of quality, or within the using green products or products that are approved to be used within a school system.
Can I ask, is it within the way, I agree with you, do business with the vendor, especially they've done a good job. The two questions I have is, how come in year 3 there's a big jump? I noticed with the low bidder too, but what is the reason is that the percent increase in
Yes.
year 2? Yeah, how did it come up?
So again, I'm not quite sure what exactly was the determining factor in terms of what the increases was. What I could guess is that in the third year is when they may have a change in contract, and they may be projecting out for the third year at the end of the current contract term. Affinico's increase for year 2 is 0.11%, and coming in from where they are currently, they're coming in, it's a 3% increase. And just to point out that the 3% increase that we have currently on this RFP is lower than we initially thought.
Move that the Weston Board, any other question? No. Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the cleaning services recommendation as presented.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we're moving on to David's favorite subject. So every year we do approve our preschool tuition rate. Typically in the past years, I would say past 3 years or so, we have approved based on and pretty much what the budget increase has been. We occasionally go out just for comparison shopping, so to speak, and we're provided what those rates are. As Michael mentioned at our committee meeting, that if you do normalize the cost, it's significantly or slightly higher than what we are just on a true average. If you normalize, you're in the range of $8,500 to $8,600. Based on just a pure average, we're coming in at $8,000. Our recommendation, based on the timing of all this, is to have an increase based on the pure average and not on a normalized cost. One of the main reasons for this is timing. Tracy had mentioned when we met that the lottery was awarded back in December. So at this time, and we kind of gave the families what the cost would be. So we do not want to significantly overburden our families by proposing a significant increase at this time in the year, and we're proposing that we do base increase on the pure average, and we change our focus next year so that this rate increase is earlier in the year and not this late. So there's two options. We can continue to have an increase which is based on the pure budget increase, or we can increase based on the average. If we increase based on the percentage increase at 2.41%, the rate for next year will be $7,491. If we do it based on the average, it's $8,039. Our recommendation is to increase it by the $8,039. And again, so in addition to that, if we basically increase in a lower amount, it's going to be a significant increase in future years for families.
I totally support number two as well. And to me, it's value. It's value pricing. I mean, my son went to ELC, and to understate the value, understate. It's just a phenomenal program, and I think any parent who gets into the program through tuition, even at $8,000, it's a fantastic program. It's bar none, no preschool.
$8,000 is a steal. Yeah.
Oh, it is absolutely. I asked last year to bump it to, I think it was $9,000 or $10,000, and Tracy chased me out of the room. Then Phil hit me with a broom. It got real ugly. But no, I think it's still too low for what our students get out of it. But I don't necessarily understand the pressures that might be created on families who tuition in, because to me, the children with needs get in, and there's no question, and there's no cost. So when you look at the parents who want to enroll their students, it's a lottery-based system, so the demand generally is higher than the supply. And so you then look at, okay, what are their options? And so when you look at their true other options, it's not going to be Darien or Wilton. They live in Weston. It's going to be the private schools. And when you look at the private schools, I don't know if you did the average tuition for the private schools, but real quickly, it's probably in the $13,000 range. So I feel like as a parent, if I were enrolling my child in a preschool and I had an option for any one of these private schools at $7,600 for Northfield up to 20, I don't know if I would do 20,000, but 13,000, and I looked at the ability to enroll my kid into the Weston public schools at 12,000, I'd be like, it's a no-brainer. So I think that we're still undercharging for what it would cost to get a lesser quality experience elsewhere.
Right, and we did consider that because I remember our conversation last year. So that's why we are recommended, or we will be changing our process in terms of when we bring forth a recommended for an increase. And because I think the sooner we notify families after an award, the better it would be for everyone. So next year we'll take a deeper dive into all these numbers and all the costs and everything else, and we'll make a proposal at that time, early in the year.
I have a question. Do we offer any sort of financial aid for local families in particular, or no? Is it just a lottery and that's it?
That's correct.
Okay.
Lottery only.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's no, the way I look at it is there is no obligation, right, for a family to send their child to Weston. They can choose Northfield, and I know lots of kids who've gone to Northfield and they rave about the program. Mm-hmm. But Yeah, I think we could charge more for what students get based on just solely what the market rate is, but obviously I would support number 2. Given the 2 choices.
Would you read the motion then?
Absolutely. Really hang me out on this one. Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the fiscal year 25 preschool tuition rates as presented. Oh, to number 2, which is your recommendation, right? Okay.
Sharon?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next item up, non-resident tuition rates. Typically, this is increased by the budget increase of 2.41%. So the recommendation for next year is to increase this by 2.41%. Just to point out that the majority of families that do participate within or as non-resident are our staff members.
Questions? David?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the fiscal year 25 tuition rates for non-residents as presented.
Second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next item up are rate rentals. This one we do increase by the most recent CPI. We typically use March. So we are recommending to increase the rates by 3.8%, which is a CPI, Corp CPI, as of March.
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the fiscal year 25 building/facility use hourly rates as presented.
Second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now that we have, moving to waiver request. So now that we have, or that the vote for capital has been approved by the voters, one of the items that we have listed for capital project for fiscal 25 or security initiatives. Typically what we have done is that we have awarded or continue to work with vendors who are a current service provider. For this year, we made a shift. I think we have discussed maybe at our finance committee meeting early in the year that we made a shift in service provider, and we sort of kind of brought all of our security, our services, intrusion and surveillance under one umbrella. Our recommendation is that we continue to work with this provider currently in-house to do the installation for the new initiative for the upcoming fiscal year. And the reason why we're requesting the waiver is that this cost is going to be over the threshold requested normally needed for an RFP. So this is a waiver to bypass or to waive the RFP process. And this is more a formal process. We have done this in the past.
So this is obviously in my wheelhouse. A couple of questions I have is, we haven't, as a board, zeroed in on what those security initiatives are, unless I missed something. I know we set aside money.
I do believe that we have discussed this.
Oh, am I maybe thinking next year then?
In executive session.
We have the list. I don't want to speak
Yeah.
in too specifics here, but I can certainly share with you again outside this meeting what we talked about in the executive session. And I think the feeling of continuing with the same vendor is because of the nature of the work and their understanding of the scope of the work. Is that
Yeah, that is it. I mean, we there's several providers, right? There's a few providers out there. The previous provider that we had issues with, right? Like we have a high standards in everything that we do, and we expect a fairly responsive turnaround time, when we reach out to our vendors. And I think, in our opinion, that was somewhat lacking. And we questioned a few times pricing that we were receiving, and if things could be done in a better way. When Director Rios came on board, he recommended, he started a conversation with Omni Data, which is the company that we want to continue to work with. They did our previous installation for our previous initiative several years ago. So when it was very good to hear from Omni Data that they could service pretty much all of our security needs. when we ask previous providers if they could do that, the answers was typically no. So when we found out that we could bring all of those services under one umbrella, that's the way we wanted to go, because it's a better response, because then you have a cohesive operations, and you can go to one point person for everything, and you're not jumping to this person or to this vendor and then another. So, we're very happy that Director Rees did recommend that we make the shift to Omni. So, and it's been working.
And it should be noted, Mr. DeVito, you were involved in that as well, correct?
Yes, and I agree with everything Phil said. I mean, the going from responsiveness to ability to do something, the ability to actually follow through with a project, and versus Omni with their all-encompassing knowledge and understanding of kind of all aspects of security, as well as how our IT infrastructure ties into that, means it's the best bet moving forward.
All right. I 100%, as being on the other side, I get the no bid vendor. We're one for one of our clients for that very reason. My only concern would be, do we wind ourselves up into one vendor who has, I don't want to say proprietary technology, but a particular vendor they use, right? So Omni Data is not building or creating some of the technology. So is there any concern that you're going to wind up potentially, or we are going to wind up in a situation where that vendor has locked ourselves into that vendor because that vendor has installed so much equipment or gear that is unique to that vendor?
Great question. And as part of the process when we onboarded Omni was making sure that that was never a possibility. And it was never brought up by them, but there was a lot of conversations between all of us, including Omni, to make sure that checks and balances are, of course, in place, to make sure that we're never cornered into using them for the foreseeable future. And the products that we're having them support are not proprietary in any way, shape, or form.
I'm comfortable with that then.
Move on to air quality. Does this require a vote?
Do we need a motion or what?
No.
It just says discussion.
Just discussion. Okay, good.
Can we sort of by consensus? I'm sorry, I'm only asking for this because I just want to be, when we move this forward to the Board of Finance for that discussion, because this is the capital project, I can reference that by consensus. We didn't have a formal vote, but it was discussed at our meeting.
Yep.
Next item up is indoor air quality inspection. So another of the wonderful world of state mandates. So we had another mandate from the state. This one had to do with air quality, which I think overall is pretty good because it helped us to have a better sense as to truly where do we stand and what our facilities are doing and stuff like that. So pretty much in a nutshell, on average, our systems are the indoor air quality on average is within the range. We do have concerns about the humidity level in some of our buildings. The test was done in the winter, so we will be doing as soon as it warms up, and before school is out, to do a test of selected locations within the school just to see if there's any improvement with our indoor, with our humidity levels. In addition to that, we're also working with our let's call them our service provider, ABS, with that manages our building management system, to see if there's anything that the systems are really operating in the way that they should, and if there's any adjustments that need to be made based on the findings when we do them in late May or early June. So this is just more sort of information by state mandate. This also needs to be posted on the website.
Thank you. Move on to committee updates. Communications Committee.
We didn't meet, so we don't have any update.
There we go. CABE.
No updates.
CES.
No updates.
Curriculum.
All right, two quick curriculum updates. One, per the directive of the state, there's a new teacher and a new leader evaluation plan that needs to be put in place. I believe right now, in-house, they're working on the details of what exactly that will look like. So the plan is next BOE meeting, the June meeting, we'll hear what the recommendation is for those new plans. And then the other update is that our next meeting, June 11th, is a very exciting one. This one is in person, but it's going to be streamed, and it is the curriculum year in review.
Brenda, can I jump in real quick on something with curriculum? This doesn't really fit in curriculum, but just because Tina's been so great walking us through the sort of tech learning over the last year, just letting you all know too, and this came from other parents who alerted me because I've developed a bit of a following as like the tech person in Board of Ed. But there's a pretty robust effort, I think, happening in a couple schools to get parents and kids to sign this Wait for 8 pledge about cell phones. So you may see some of those going around. Parents have kind of taken the baton with that. I'm also, just so you all know that, but also flagging, been getting lots of people asking about this book, The Anxious Generation. So you may hear more of that happening either in curriculum or elsewhere. So anyway, that's that.
I think we've done a lot of EOC conversations this evening. Finance and operations, Phil covered the finance side, and there's really nothing of import on the operations side. Oh, of course.
You'd all like to add something.
To what?
To the finance and operations.
Yeah, sure.
Meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a healthy building agenda item that like Dale Master and I sort of manage, and we talked a lot about lighting. And I sent Tina, Phil, and Mike the technical paper I used to inform the implementation of the initiative for next year. So there's some really informative pictures of classes with different lighting scenarios and different learning scenarios. So I thought that was kind of fascinating, but they now have that, so they can start formulating the plan.
Thank you. Policy?
We have another upcoming meeting, correct? And we will be moving those policies we reviewed tonight to a second read.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think of what else we said that we were going to start addressing if we were going to do some more sunsetting, I think.
We were going
Tina, do you remember
to
any of
double
that?
check if there was some real low-hanging fruit of sunsets we could.
Because it's the end of the year.
Correct, yes.
So that's where we are.
WEF?
WEF. Tina, did you go to the most recent meeting? Because I wasn't able to make it on the 14th. Okay.
They have some new board members coming on to the committee, and at the end of this year, they will be transitioning some of those new members onto the board level. And they accepted some donations.
Oh, from the garden club. Yeah.
And I also mentioned at that meeting that we are working with Max Stossel with funding from PTO, and he's coming on November 31st to support all our secondary students, but also provide a parent evening to all Weston parents in town. So we wanted to publicly announce that and get more support.
And that's about cell phone use.
November 21st.
Awesome. That's it.
So the next scheduled meeting is on June 17th at 7 o'clock in person here again. And that's the last item on the agenda. But before we break, I would personally like to thank everyone for what I thought was a very informative and measured meeting for the public, for the board, for everyone. I mean, it's obviously a big decision that has to be made. It's going to move on to the Board of Finance. The Board of Finance has to give us a budget. We don't have one. There's a lot of things even over and above what we want to do. So there is a meeting on the 3rd where Tecton's going to present to this Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, and we're obviously being invited to that.
Yeah.
But seriously, I thought tonight was it was a good night.
Yeah, civil discourse, which is what we're.
Civil, yes.
Yeah.
No tents, no.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for the principals for hanging in.
Yeah, very much. Motion to
7
adjourn?
o'clock comes early.
So moved.
Second?
I second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Peter. Go on Space Mountain.